Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Comprehensive Winnipeg Jets discussion and analysis for you on this Saturday morning. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Pleased to be joined by Ezra Ginsburg, Dave Minuk sporting a Chicago Cubs hat. Is that right, Dave? Correct. Okay, there you go. Big Cubbies fan this week after being a Pirates fan, I believe, and a Dodgers fan the last couple of weeks. So
and Mets. I actually think I was wearing Mets last time.
Mets week. So certainly no sports bigamy going on from Dave Minuk over there. But nice to see you, gentlemen. It's been a whole about 10 and a half hours since we last got together. I hope everybody is doing well on this Saturday. Maybe one last dose of fried matzah before Passover wraps up. Whatever it might be. Happy Easter to all those who are celebrating Easter this weekend. We hope it's so nice to see so many of you this morning in the chat, and I guess equally as nice to see Dave and Ezzy as well.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. I just stayed up all night. I was too excited for today's show, so I didn't even go to bed. So I'm a little bit tired, but I've had 14 cups of coffee, so I should be good to go.
Only 14.
Only 14. I was thinking about going for that 15th cup, Drew, but I decided that 14 was probably my max. But it was an exciting game last night, boys. We had a great post-game show, and we had lots of good participation, in the chat from everybody watching. And it was one of those games where you didn't want it to end, right? And I kind of made the joke, I was just assuming Mark Scheifele was going to keep that shootout going, but obviously he wasn't able to beat Jack Campbell, and aside from Andrew Kopp, nobody was able to beat Campbell last night. So it was just one of those fantastic games. And, I think when you look back on that game, it's, easy to, think of the second period or, the overtime when Dubois took the penalty and, think that, the Leafs could have easily scored on that power play. But Hellebuck, made some big saves, and, it's going to be exciting. These two teams meet 4 more times. And, the fans are the ones that win here, because, we're going to have meaningful games. Both of these teams want to finish first. And Dave and Drew, we can talk about, how much that matters. I really don't think it's going to matter as much as it did in previous years. And in previous years, we know home ice advantage isn't as big of an advantage maybe as it used to be, but especially with no fans, we know the Jets are going to make the playoffs. So whether they end up finishing first or second or third, we know they're going to be a playoff team. But it was a great hockey game last night, and I'm looking forward to the next time these two teams play.
Yeah, can't help but think that if the Jets do the playoffs, what do you think that they're going to have? How teams are using cardboard cutouts? You got to think they're going to have some sort of whiteout cutout. So the arena, it seems like it's a whiteout, even if there's no fans in the building.
They'll certainly try and sell cutouts of fans.
Lots of people, lots of teams like the Brandon Wheat Kings did that, and a lot of times, it's not like they're doing it for profit. The money goes to their charity, their foundation. So, I don't think it'd be a big deal, and I think it'd be good. I always think I think our friend Brad Schlossman, who writes for the Grand Forks Herald, I think he was in the Korean Baseball League or something like that. I think there's a picture of him there. So I think it's kind of fun. I think that, I actually was a little surprised that they haven't done it to date, but I suspect that that'll be something you'll see in the playoffs.
Well, what they really need to get rid of, and this is a total aside and really not completely relevant to the show today, but that's okay. They need to get rid of that red light bouncing off of that red truck in the corner of the Saddle Dome, because that is distracting. I don't know how the players haven't complained about that. You watch the game on TV in Calgary whenever the Jets were there, or if you're watching, another game in Calgary, there's a red glare on the ice. And I know that it distracts me as a viewer. I tweeted about this when the Jets were there, last week. I got a lot of comments saying, yes, it distracts, other viewers as well. So it's not me being a grumpy old man who yells at a cloud for once. But, I think that's something that, I don't think the playoffs are going to be an issue in Calgary, but I think that's something I'm surprised that the NHL hasn't already addressed, that red light glaring off the red truck is causing a distraction for viewers at home. But, that's an aside that really I don't think we need to delve too deep into this Saturday morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So nice to see so many of you joining us in the chat. Good conversation going on with all of our community of Winnipeg Jets fans. If you're new here, if you haven't already done it, smash the subscribe button. Make sure you like the show, subscribe to the show, get it alerted each and every time we go live on YouTube. So we really encourage you to do that. Let's get started talking about the Winnipeg Jets and the week that was for the Winnipeg Jets. When you really sort of look back at it since last Saturday when the Jets lost in Calgary, not a great week for the Jets. 1-2-1 is their record. So, 4 times the Jets played this week. They only got 1 win in those 4 games. But, I think we're at the point of the season now where 500, close to 500, a little over 500 is going to be good enough for the Winnipeg Jets. Last night, obviously, you wanted to get the win. It ended up going to the shootout. You lose in the shootout. You sort of, shrug your shoulders a little bit and say, oh, well. But the game was the way they wanted it to look after Wednesday's game wasn't the way they wanted it to look. The game in Calgary on Monday was a dominant effort. So I think it may be getting a little lost in the shuffle that the Jets' record this week really wasn't great and was probably actually one of their worst weeks record-wise. But the results are still good enough to keep them firmly in a playoff position.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, the record, and it doesn't matter at this point, right? Because as you say, Drew, I mean, the Jets have I don't know what you would say it is right now, 90% chance of making the playoffs. It might even be higher than that. But I mean, you're talking about, a 4-3 record on that road trip. And we talked about how important it was to win that last game against Calgary, because certainly the Flames needed it much more than the Jets did. Mm-hmm. And, these 2 games against the Leafs, I mean, you have to look at these games individually almost, right? Because the first game was definitely disappointing. I mean, we don't have to go back and rehash, that first period when the Jets came out really sluggish and fell behind a couple of goals, right? But the game yesterday is much more indicative of how they've played most of the year. So, yeah, you only got 1 point out of a possible 4 points against the Leafs. But, we talked about this. I mean, the Kyle Connor goal, the Kyle Connor save, that Jack Campbell makes, the Jets had their opportunities. Like they brought it in the third period after they kind of slumped a little bit in the second period. So yes, I mean, you left some points on the board. Over the last couple of weeks, you've been a 500 hockey team, so you don't like that. But I think all things considered, having those 17 games in 31 days in March and a majority of those games, Dave, on the road, I think overall the fact that you're in a position right now in early April, to finish first in the North Division, that's what we should be focusing on. And look, the Jets, have some warts in their game. There's no doubt about it. But, watching that game last night against the Leafs, just talking about that one game, boys, I mean, they came to play, and, I think they showed us that when they're playing at their A level, they're not afraid of the Leafs, and they can beat the Leafs. And yes, Jack Campbell was otherworldly. There's no doubt about that. So yeah, I think again, you lost some games that you probably should have won, but the schedule does get a little bit easier here. And then of course, a couple of weeks from now, you're going to play the Leafs 3 times at home, but you've got the Senators coming up. You've obviously got the Habs coming up, which aren't going to be easy games. So, it is going to get a little easier, and you're going to get some more days off and everything like that. So
I think to your point there, Ezzy, about the days off, I do think that, this week from now until next Thursday, where they head out on the road to Montreal, only having that one game in the next 5 or 6 days, it is going to be, I mean, it looked like there for a while, it was going to be 0 games between now and next Thursday. Obviously, the Ottawa game got moved from the end of the year to Monday. But I do think that this little break that the Jets are in right now, because it's really rare this year to get, only one game between 5 or 6 days like the Jets currently have. I do think that's going to be almost a good opportunity for the Jets to take a deep breath, to reset. They play on Monday, just sort of recalibrate themselves and refocus themselves for the next 18 games of the stretch drive to the playoffs. As you mentioned, the odds of the Jets making the playoffs, according to Money Puck, the Jets have a 95.1% chance to make the playoffs in the North Division. The Leafs are at 99.91%.
What's Montreal?
Montreal's actually ahead of the Jets at 98.3%. Yeah. Edmonton's just behind the Jets at 94.4%. Yeah. So you got to go all the way down. Calgary's odds after they lost last night to Edmonton in regulation, I should add. The Calgary's down to 8% chance to making the playoffs. Yeah. So it almost seems like it's home and cooled for the top 4 teams in the North Division, Dave.
Yeah, and I think the key is just getting through this healthy. I think that's the number one factor. And I think, when you have that many games in that short a period of time, I think there's an opportunity for you to lose players. And the fact is, obviously Blake Wheeler wasn't at 100%, but he'll have today to rest and recover. And Paul Maurice said it. We thought we might see a full practice on Sunday, but Paul Maurice said in his availability that they're going to allow guys to stay off the ice that are needing to heal up. And I'm sure, look, in the course of a season, guys are always playing with something. There's nobody's 100% during an NHL season. So there's guys who are dealing with some sort of nagging injury, and I think what you're going to see is an opportunity for those guys to rest up. And, you're going to play a Sens team in a one-off. And then what happens? Then Tuesday, you'll have probably either a day off or another light practice. And then Wednesday will be a practice day and a travel day. So realistically, you're giving thank you, Blake. But realistically, what you're doing is you're giving your team that opportunity to kind of get, to your point, Drew, get healed up, get ready. But you're not taking them out of a rhythm. That's why I think it's a huge advantage to the Winnipeg Jets to play that game on Monday. Because
I think if they have the 5 days off,
as opposed to the 5 days. I mean, look, there's pros and cons for both, obviously, because you really give your team an opportunity to heal and rest up. And again, not to say that 5 days would be sufficient if you've got some serious injuries, but the reality is if you're playing, you could be injured, but you're probably not. It's not as serious as it could be to prevent you from playing in the lineup. And I think what this will do is it'll keep these guys in that rhythm and maybe feeling good about their game. They're feeling good about what they did against Toronto. You're going to have a one-off against the Senators, and then you're going on the road. You play 2 against Montreal, 2 against Ottawa, and 1 in Toronto. So I think you're going to feel like you're not completely out of sync. And that's kind of the one thing, right? We talk about consistency a lot. I mean, we're looking at it with the Manitoba Moose, for example. They had a 12-day break between games, played a 4-game series. Now they have a 7-day break between games, and then you play another series. Like, there's no rhythm. And hockey players are all about consistency and rhythm and patterns. And when you take them out of it, I think it throws them off. So I think there'll be a big advantage to the Winnipeg Jets to play Monday against Senators. Forget about you want to call it an easy 2 points. I don't think any team is necessarily an easy 2 points in the North. But I think it's still an opportunity to keep them in that rhythm, and I think that's important for the Jets.
Yeah, and to that point, Dave, we talked about this a little bit on the post-game show last night. You would have liked to have a little bit more practice, but obviously you're going to have a day or two less practice right now. But you're going to have to be very careful with how you practice, because you guys mentioned the upcoming road trip. What is it? 5 games, but after that, the Jets are going to have those 6 home games in a row, and there's going to be a 3-day break between that game against the Oilers and the 3 games against the Leafs in a row, which includes a back-to-back, right? So you're going to have you'd think they're going to practice probably a couple times out of those 3 days. You assume they're going to get a day off. There's no reason to think they're going to practice 3 days in a row. But that's something to watch here, because that some of these players are going to get rested towards the end of the season. We just talked about it. I mean, the Jets are going to the playoffs. It's 95%. You might as well just make it 100% at this point in the season. So that's something to watch as well. Even though these games are going to have seeding implications, I think you have to just assume that some of the big boys and some of the guys that are hurting might get the last game of the season off, the second last game of the season off, stuff like that, right? So yeah, at the end of the day, the Jets are in a good position here. Like you go back to when the season started. I mean, if you knew that you were going to be in second place with a chance to catch the Leafs, it's going to be tough. Don't get me wrong. Picking up 4 points and passing them isn't going to be easy. But, those games coming up against the Leafs, it's going to give them an opportunity. As we say, those are going to be those 4-point games where they're going to, hopefully be able to leapfrog them and get top spot in the division.
And then one thing I just want to interject quickly, because Blake Wallace is in the comments made a good point, and I think it's one that's worth noting, is the fact that it gets rid of a back-to-back. So that May 7th in Ottawa, against Ottawa, and May 8th were back-to-back games. And I think from a Jets perspective, especially to end the season and then get ready for the playoffs, to eliminate a back-to-back where, you could have something happen. Guys aren't always as crisp in the second game of a back-to-back. I think that'll be big for Winnipeg as well. So talk about an opportunity, right? You keep them in the rhythm and you eliminate that back-to-back. With
the caveat, I just want to put an asterisk on that, Dave, that we don't know when the Canucks games, the 2 that were postponed.
Yeah, of course.
When they're going to be rescheduled.
I suspect, and Andrew Kalp talked about this yesterday when asked, I don't think they're going to screw the Jets and put them like 1, 2, 3. I think that they're going to pace them out a little bit. So I think and again, I just think if they hadn't done this, think about how much more condensed it would have been at the tail end of the season. So I think you're right. It's possible that they could end up having those Canucks games if the Canucks play. We don't know, and that's Coffee and Tea is asking a valid question. Could the Canucks season be over? I suspect not. I suspect they'll just wait to see what happens with them. But again, I think it's just right now, based on the way things are, it's a benefit for the Jets the way the schedule has now played out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The Jets aren't a team right now that needs a lot of practice in the sense of improvement, because the way they played Monday against Calgary, that's how they want to look. The way they played last night against the high-flying Toronto Maple Leafs team, that's how they want to look. So things are going pretty well for this Winnipeg Jets team in terms of their game resembles on the ice what they would like it to look like when discussing it in the dressing room. When sketching it out on the whiteboard, the game looks pretty similar to how they want it to look. So these practices, I think, are more an opportunity for Paul Maurice to maybe, I'm going to use the word experiment for lack of a better word, maybe try some different things out, as opposed to really having to refine a lot. Because, frankly, if the Jets play like they played last night, more often than not, they're going to be successful. Last night, it obviously went to a shootout, and when it goes to a shootout, you flip a coin. But, for the most part, the Monday game, well, that was, utter dominance against a lesser opponent. And the Friday game, last night's game, was a high-quality, even game against a team that that is in the upper echelon of the North Division and where you want to see yourself, and that's what the Jets sort of looked like last night.
Right. And, we talked about this, after the 7-game road trip, you're coming off those games against the Flames, and then the opponent is much different in the Leafs, right? And I think that was part of it, why maybe they came out a little bit slow in that first period against the Leafs, because, that's all the Leafs need. Like, they have so much talent. Like, I mentioned this on the post-game show last night. Like, this is the best I've ever seen Austin Matthews play. And he's been a top player in the NHL for years now. But, that line with Marner and Hyman, I really do think you could argue it's the best line in the league right now. I really do. And I realize, the perfection line with Marchand, Pasternak, and Bergeron, that's a top line. There's other really good lines in the NHL, guys, but it's tough to argue. Like, Zach Hyman is the third best player on that line. And, many games he looks like the best player on that line. So the Leafs are a very dangerous team. So I really think it's impressive how the Jets were able to elevate their game last night and almost steal that game in regulation. But, Dave mentions, the way this team is playing is the way, you want to look. And Drew, you touched on it, and that's completely right. And, if they play anywhere close to the way they played last night, they're going to absolutely steamroll the Ottawa Senators. You obviously can't take the Senators lightly. But if the Jets play like that consistently, they're going to steamroll the Senators. And then you're going to have some good games coming up against the Habs, because the Habs have given the Jets some problems this year. I mean, we've seen the Habs beat the Jets a few times this year. And, they know that they're one of the teams they have to catch, even if it's going to be tough for the Canadians to catch the Jets. This is a potential first-round matchup, right, boys? So those games are going to be very interesting. It's not going to be, one of those, barometer games like we talked about, back when the Jets and Leafs played those 3 games in Toronto, right? But the Habs are, getting healthier. And, this is a team that I don't think you want to face in the playoffs. I still think the Jets can beat them in the playoffs. But whenever you've got Carey Price and Jake Allen between the pipes and you've got all of that depth, they've acquired Eric Stahl. I think it's not going to be an easy out in the playoffs.
I don't think there's going to be any easy outs in the playoffs, especially with the way the North Division currently looks. Saturday morning, nice to see so many of you joining us in the chat. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. This segment is brought to you by Dr. Les Rikus and the team at Linden Market Dental Center, official dentist of Illegal Curve Hockey. Don't be an Ezzy. Always wear a mouth guard and give yourself peace of mind protection, as well as facial, teeth, and mouth protection. To make an appointment to get your teeth to ting, visit lindenmarketdentalcenter.com. The Illegal Curve question of the day, you can see it. For those of you watching on the YouTube channel, you can see it scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Will Stastny, Dubois, and Wheeler succeed offensively, or are the Jets too top-heavy with Connor, Scheifele, and Ehlers together as a line? We want your input on that question. You can chat in the chat window. You can tweet at us at Illegal Curve, of course. it was Monday that Paul Maurice made that shift, basically moving Mark Scheifele with Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers, moving Dubois with Wheeler and Stastny. We saw the immediate results from Connor, Scheifele, and Ehlers' dominant performance on Monday night against the Flames. Wednesday they got a goal for the Jets, but it obviously wasn't enough. Last night only one goal scored, and that was scored by Andrew Kopp. Let me ask you guys that question. Does 81, 55, and 27 work together, or are the Jets too top heavy right now with Dubois, Stastny, and Wheeler together?
They're not too top heavy, and that line absolutely works well together. And you just mentioned it, Drew. It's been 3 games now, and they've had the results, and they could have easily had a few goals yesterday. And I don't think it's a question of top heavy. It's something that we talked about on the post-game show. This is the thing to watch with the Jets. Is Paul Stastny going to move from the wing to center? That's the thing you have to watch. And then the question becomes, well, who's going to, if Adam Lowry moves down to the 4th line, who moves up to the 2nd line? And, I've said this many times before. I think Andrew Kopp is a great candidate to move on the wing of that 2nd line. And you've got some other players that you can choose from. I mean, Mason Appleton, I think the way that he's played this year, you could put him on the 2nd line as well. But that's something that you want to watch. There's no doubt that the Jets have offensive depth, right? Like, so this is not a top heavy team. Like, I don't think it's like a Calgary or a Vancouver. Like, you can see one of the main reasons those teams have struggled is because they don't have the depth like the Jets do, or the Leafs do, or the Canadians do, or even the Oilers do, even though McDavid and Draisaitl get 2 goals each every game. So I think that for me is what I'm going to be watching to see if you do see Stastny move down to center, like let's say that 3rd line, and then what does that 3rd line become? Like, do you see, is it Jansen Harkins and Paul Stastny and Mason Appleton? Or maybe it's Andrew Kopp and Jansen Harkins with Paul Stastny in the middle, and then you have that's what I'm looking for. I don't think that because you've put Scheifele between Connor and Ehlers, that's taking away from any line. I think that line has been fantastic, and yeah, it might be changed up, but based on what we've seen, that line has been very good possession wise and producing results.
Dave, since the line change was made, Scheifele's got 4 points in 3 games. Connor's got 3 assists in 3 games. Ehlers has 3 assists in 3 games. So 10 points between that line in the last 3 games. Most of that coming, of course, on Monday against the woeful Calgary Flames. The flip side of that coin is you look at Wheeler, 1 assist in those 3 games. Dubois, 1 goal in those 3 games. Paul Stastny also 1 assist. So do you think that Stastny, Wheeler, and Dubois is going to work long term, or do you think that you haven't seen a ton from them so far, or do you think it's just a matter of time as they get used to one another?
Well, what was the Jets' record during that time? 1-2-1.
Well, no. Well, if you really since Monday, 1-1-1.
1-1-1. But I guess ultimately that's what really is the what you should be looking at, right? The individual points are great for individual players, but this is a team game, and you want a team result. And so, what gives your team the best chance to win? That's really should be the question that you're asking and looking at. And I don't know that individual points matter. Obviously they could be a barometer for success, but I think you have to say what gives your team the best chance to win. Now, I think a point you made earlier in the show, Drew, is that you have opportunity to test things out and practice. And again, it's essentially a foregone conclusion you're going to be a playoff team. So what are you going to do for the last, how many games? 18 games in the season? What are you going to do? You're going to allow your team to hopefully be healthy and get through this in a healthy manner and not sustain any major injuries. But you're also it's going to allow the team to really test some things out and try some things. And so you're trying it right now. And again, it's been 3 games. Like you don't lose your mind because it's 3 games and they haven't been dominant, or they haven't had the level of success that you anticipated they would instantly. Teams, it just doesn't happen like that. And again, does Pierre-Luc Dubois still look like a guy who's getting comfortable within the Jets framework? I think so. I think that there's still a lot more from his game that you're going to come to see. And again, it's about becoming comfortable in your own skin in the team. Is he too deferential, which I've seen some people suggest to older players like Wheeler and Stastny in terms of doing some things on his own? Maybe. But I just think it's one of those situations where, it's almost like we were talking about with Pascal Vincent, like that instant gratification. It's been 3 games. So, and again, it's not as if the Jets went 0-3. And so you're sitting there going, okay, well, you've got to keep rolling, see how it goes. And then again, the impression I got from Paul Maurice's media availability a few days ago or whenever it was, is that they're going to be trying some things out. They're going to be moving some players around to really see how that works. So he'll roll with this. And he said he was going to roll with this for a little bit, and then he'll go and try something else.
Yeah,
so, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, no, and nobody should be really, because you look at the success that Lowry, Kopp, and Appleton had on that road trip, right? Like, it wasn't that long ago that Andrew Kopp had his 4-goal game, right? Like, Lowry's been putting the puck in the net, Appleton's been putting the puck in the net all year long, right? So it would be one thing if you were kind of getting a lack of scoring from that third line, and then obviously the fourth line has been led offensively by Matty Perreault. You're not expecting a lot. You were never going to get a lot of goals from Nate Thompson and Trevor Lewis, and we talked about it. They were very strong yesterday, highlighted by that really solid shift late in the first period, right? So I agree with Dave. Like, yes, the second line is not clicking like you would want it to. Like, it's not getting the results, but they were much better on Friday night than they certainly were on Wednesday night. So you should look at some tinkering with that line. But there's time, and the Jets are healthy right now, and that's the thing that they have going for them. It's not like they don't have options. Like, you can move Kopp up, you can move Appleton up. I mean, you could even move a guy like Matty Perreault up. But really, I sound like a broken record here, boys. But the big thing is, are you going to go up the middle with Scheifele, Dubois, Stastny, and Lowry? That's the big question, and I think we're all waiting. Nobody knows the answer, but we know that's kind of the wild card that Paul Maurice has in his pocket right now, right?
Well, I pulled it up on my second screen here. When I look to the right there, I'm looking at my second screen. It's going back to March 22nd. So what's that? About 10 days or so ago. You look at the Jets' time on ice per game played. So over the last 7 games, the lowest forward on average ice time per game is Trevor Lewis at 10 minutes. And the highest forward is Mark Scheifele at 20:46. We haven't seen the Jets be able to sort of spread out time on ice like this, I think, ever in Paul Maurice's tenure as Winnipeg Jets head coach. For so many years, it was always about the fourth line playing 5 minutes, 6 minutes a game, and it was a hold your breath 6 minutes a game. Just the ability to spread that time out and really not have and still get the results is a huge asset, I think, for the Winnipeg Jets, especially as you get closer to playoff time when your guys are fresher. And we've talked about this, and we thought that would be why they would use the taxi squad, and it hasn't come to that this year, that they haven't used the taxi squad to keep guys fresh. But they're doing a good enough job keeping guys fresh by constantly rolling 4 lines a game, no matter the matchup. And that's, I think, and I'll admit first, I'll raise my hand and say that I didn't quite understand why Lewis and Thompson were getting the minutes they were getting, but they've outperformed my expectations, vastly outperformed them. And I think that explains to some extent why the Jets are playing so well, just the ability to constantly get 4 lines into the game and keep everybody fresh and not have to run your horses into the ground too heavily.
Yeah, and you're going to have some injuries. Like, we obviously, hope that they continue to be this healthy, but it's kind of inevitable, right, guys? That you're going to have an injury, even if it's a game or two, and then a guy like Jansen Harkins gets into the lineup, and especially come playoff time, which is obviously not for another month and a half or so. But yeah, you're right, Drew. I mean, this has been a luxury for Paul Maurice to have healthy forwards, to have the depth. He's been able to keep that fourth line together. We've talked about how important it is to have, a fourth line that looks the same, right? We've seen, so many different machinations of a fourth line. If you think to last year and years before, and we know that, Kopp, Lowry, Appleton has been together for the majority of the season. So yeah, we're talking about kind of minor issues here. Like, the Jets are one of the top offensive teams in the league. They've got a great power play. The penalty kill is pretty solid, especially, as of late. So yeah, we're kind of nitpicking here, aren't we?
Well, the problems that the Jets have are not extensive, and that's a good sign when you're at, you're into the stretch drive and the home stretch of the season. That you're right. It's not like years past, like last year or 2 years ago, where at this stage in the season, you're saying, it's almost what's wrong with the Jets. How are the Jets going to qualify for the playoffs? Are they going to be able to get over that hump? They have to go, put the pedal to the metal the entire time. These problems, Dave, for the most part, are minor ones, and it's more about tweaking than it is about revamping an entire system at this stage.
Well, and I think you make a very good point, Drew, in terms of the minutes. I think that's probably a reason why your guys are staying healthier. right? You're not overtaxing them. You're not overburdening them. And especially in a condensed schedule, I think how important that is. So I think what you're seeing is again, this is nothing's normal about this year, right? I mean, it's not as if the coaching staff knew how to adjust to playing in a pandemic year with these under these circumstances. None of the teams did. But you have to give them credit in terms of their ability to get these guys to buy in, and in terms of in terms of the rest and recovery phase of things. And again, I think we're seeing the benefit of that from a perspective of a healthy team, a team that's not sustaining injuries. And again, I'm not saying that you couldn't have something happen in a freak manner. Of course you could. But I just think you don't see the minor things that seem to be that normally take a team out. And maybe, and again, I'm not saying this is 100% the reality. I'm just thinking, like, based on the way, it's a little bit of conjecture here, but it just seems that this team seems to be rolling along in a health manner because maybe in part because they're managing to play a complete team game. They're playing 4 lines. They're not relying on that first line to play, 24, 25, 26 minutes a game like we saw early in the season. So, and I agree with Mark. I mean, I've been a proponent of that for years. You can't hide your fourth line. You need to be able to roll them out. And Paul Maurice, again, people don't agree with it. People didn't like the fourth line, but Paul Maurice has been singing the praises, if you remember, for 2 weeks now, that he's been specifically pointing out his fourth line after post games, during practices. He's been singing their praises, and he's been saying like how he feels confident in rolling them out in certain situations. And we've seen it in games, late in games, that fourth line comes out to do something because, you've got a face-off that you want Nate Thompson to win, or you feel comfortable with those guys protecting. So again, I think there's been a balance of those lines, not necessarily all the top 2 lines. And maybe people want to see there's a little more balance throughout the course in terms of scoring, but I think that you're seeing a little more balance. And I think a result of that has simply been that maybe it's allowed this team to be a little bit fresher and stay a little bit looser.
I would agree with your assessment there, Dave. Leah Hextall is going to join us momentarily. So why don't we just take a bit of a pause, pay some bills, play some advertisements, commercials. And when we come back, Leah Hextall is going to join us for more Jets talk and talk about that 5-overtime thriller that happened last Saturday in U.S. college hockey. She was on the call, the play-by-play broadcaster of that game. So take a pause, sip some coffee. We'll be right back. Smash the like button. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, bottom of the hour. We're live on our YouTube channel and all our social media platforms. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, joined by Ezra Ginsburg and Dave Minuk, and there she is, a good friend of our program going back many years. I wouldn't say we grew up together because you were in this business longer than we have, but it's been a while, and we have a rule here on Illegal Curve, Leah, that if any friends of ours ever call a 5 overtime game, if they're ever on the play-by-play call for that, they immediately get an invite back onto the show. So good to see you. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Oh, guys, thank you. It's so lovely to see you all. I remember we do go way back. This would be back in almost I feel like the early aughts, as the kids call them nowadays. But when you guys first started, and just to see everything that you guys have done and where you've taken this, I mean, I know it just started as a passion project and back in the day, and then look at you guys now. So congratulations on everything you guys have done with this. And it's so nice to be back with the boys of Illegal Curve. So thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, Leah. We'll talk about the Winnipeg Jets, but we have to go back to last Saturday. I mean, as a broadcaster, and I have no experience in this. I mean, we've done some long broadcasts, but we've never done play-by-play like you were doing last Saturday. 5 overtimes, 8 periods of hockey. A game to qualify and to go to the Frozen Four. Just, I guess, sort of walk us through what you're experiencing, period by period as you're broadcasting that North Dakota, Minnesota Duluth game last Saturday night. Minnesota Duluth obviously winning 3-2 in overtime. Just sort of walk us through the emotions of the event, I guess.
Well, right there, Drew, you hit it. The fact that this was a regional final. So one of these teams is going to go and have the ability to be in the Frozen Four, which gives you a great opportunity in Pittsburgh to win a national championship starting on April 8th on ESPN. So there's so much on the line for these college kids. And you have to remember that these two teams had senior classes. UND had a senior class that had was Jackson Keene, the son of Mike Keene, who was a grinder on their fourth line, who's meant so much to them throughout this program. Also spent some time in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, so really has roots to Manitoba. And they had this senior class that because of COVID-19, they didn't play the NCAA tournament last year. So all of these 8 seniors came back for UND. It was the only second time in the program's history that they've had a full upper class return because they had unfinished business. And that was their motto all season long, and they're the top team in the nation. So they're coming up against the 2-time defending national champions in Minnesota Duluth, who on the other side of that have a freshman class that has never lost a tournament game because all they do is win national championships that are now their senior class. So this was what was going up against each other. So we knew that this was going to be not only the marquee game of our regional, but probably the marquee game of all the regionals. There was so much on the line here for those two teams. So going into it, you just don't want to screw up. That's basically it. That was my emotion, is I just didn't want to screw this game up because it's such a big game and the entire crew felt the same way. You want to have your best performance. And then the game starts, and through 40 minutes, we didn't have any score, but it wasn't one of those scoreless, boring games. This was a game of back and forth, great saves, great structure, playing very well, some power play opportunities, great kills. And then you get into third, and bang, bang, in a $120, Minnesota Duluth, the defending champions, score twice on Adam Scheel. And it's looking like they're going back. It looks like they're going back to the Frozen Four. But with 2.5, Brad Berry, who we all know back from his Manitoba Moose days and as an assistant coach, he pulls his tender, Scheel's out, and they go bang, bang. And suddenly we're tied at 2 in the dying seconds. And the emotion that the call had for me in those moments, there was nothing forced about it. Sometimes as a play-by-play, what I've learned is that even if it doesn't feel exciting, you have to illustrate that emotion through your tone. And it's something that I work on because I'm still very new to this. But this was I was completely caught up in the game. I remember when Jordan Kawaguchi tied it at 2-2, the captain for UND, my arms went up and I went like this to my head because I was like, it's tied, and you couldn't help but just be living with them. because it was incredible. And we had fans in the stands. In Fargo, we had 25% capacity. And these fans, if you guys have been to college hockey game, especially at UND, you know they're fans. They travel well and they just are in it. And Minnesota Duluth had amazing fans there as well. So it was great. So we had that emotion in the rink. So it was incredible. And then overtime starts. And overtime starts. And you think, and I really thought it was going to end quick. I thought someone's gonna nail this. And we went through it, and then we had the offside goal. It looked like I had my game call. Minnesota Duluth is moving on. Book it to Pitt. They're off. Kind of thing. And then it gets called back, and we're going again. And then it started to build. And listen, overtime, as you guys know it, when you have so many overtimes, the game's going to decrease. Mental fatigue, physical fatigue, not only for the players, for us as well. And, you make your little mistakes calling that game. And I definitely did. But you're with it and you're just doing your best to, focus on what's going on, keep emotion, keep people entertained. But, then at the end of the day, Luke Milmock, the freshman from Wilcox, Saskatchewan, who got inserted into the lineup for this game, the lowest time on ice of all the players, ends it in overtime and sends Minnesota Duluth back to the Frozen Four. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but it was just one, it's 8 periods of hockey, right? So it's hard to condense it, but it was one of those games where you really didn't have to force it because, maybe second, third intermission was a little bit, but it was so exciting. And I just feel thrilled that I'm part of the 5OT club that, ESPN's Steve Levy is part of it and our friend Gord Miller from TSN, and that's it. So it's rare air. So I just feel really fortunate to have been a part of it.
Yeah, well, first of all, Leah, you definitely do not have to apologize because that's why we asked you. I texted you we texted you to come on, and we want to talk some Jets with you as well. But we have to keep talking about this game. There's so many questions that we have, right? Like, did the shoes come off earlier before the fourth OT? Because I saw your tweet that the shoes came off. So we want to know, if the shoes came off, between the third period and the first overtime, or if it was just later. But honestly, I wanted to ask you about, as this game was progressing, did you get that feeling maybe, as you said, you thought that the game might end in the first overtime, but as you got into the second and third overtime, Minnesota Duluth head coach, the famous Scott Sandlin, said, this is the best game he's ever been a part of. And as you mentioned, this is a guy who's done everything in college hockey. Did you start to, now that you've had time to look back on it, I guess, but when you were in that moment, was that kind of going through your head? Everybody in the hockey world is watching this. And that's why I think, all of Manitoba was so proud that you were getting to call that game, right? Because everybody was just so, anxious and excited to see, how that game was going to end.
Yeah, you mentioned it right there. Coach Sandlin, 21 years with Minnesota Duluth alone in his coaching career, was with UND prior. And for him to say that, and we interviewed him right after the game ended, and you could just see everybody was just gassed, but at the same time there, especially for him, because he was on the winning side of it, you could see though the emotion in him that he was just so proud of his team and that they got through it and they got through it on the winning side and we're still playing. This was a game where first of all, my shoes came off after the third OT. I couldn't do it anymore. And that's my rookie mistake. I was in heels. First of all, I was not in stilettos or anything crazy like that. I'm not stupid. I was in very respectable, very comfortable heels that are made specifically for standing long times and for women. And it was so funny because in my car before I left, my runners were right there. And I thought, well, maybe I should take them just in case. And then I didn't. And it just shows you always trust your gut. You always trust your gut when it tells you something, because I should have taken them because goodness did I need them. So the shoes came off. I didn't care anymore. I was like, I cannot stand in these heels anymore. So that's when they came off, Ezzy. But, it was one of those things where when you're in it, I was just so focused on just, being able to do the job, because I'm very new to this. I mean, entering this game, I had called 12 games, 13 games, and I hadn't called in over a year. I hadn't called since my NHL game back on March 8th of 2020. And it was, my confidence going into this tournament was low because I was very nervous about how am I going to do when I haven't called for so long, because there was no MJHL this year for me to practice on. I just didn't have those opportunities to get reps. And the NCAA tournament is such a beast because they have selection show Sunday. So you have 4 days to learn 4 teams. And this isn't a league in college that I cover all the time. And it's a crapshoot. You don't know who you're going to get because of how they do the pairwise and whatnot, which they couldn't even do this year because of COVID and the way the season went down. So besides UND, I didn't know who else was coming. So it's just a great deal of work for everybody involved in it. So you go in feeling a little unsure of numbers and don't confuse this team with this team. And it was, and then we had our our Michigan game against Minnesota Duluth, and no contest because unfortunately for poor Michigan, they had to pull out because they had a COVID-19 positive. And this was a team that has the projected #1 overall NHL draft pick and Owen Powers on the team in a freshman class. It's just ridiculous. So we were pretty devastated about that, as was Michigan. So I had even less games to call going into this final. But, I had one game, we got there. I felt pretty good about going into it. And as the game just kind of went on, you just wanted to focus on the names and numbers. And my job was to describe the play. And I just was trying to keep it as simple as I could in my head, because where I ran into trouble, especially as I got tired, was when I had to start talking about other things. I know I said, I mentioned Jed Caulfield. I called him Bernard Docker, Jacob Bernard Docker. We were reintroducing the game because we knew people were joining us as the game went on. So I remember saying he was a Pittsburgh Penguins draft pick, but he's an Ottawa Senator. So I had to correct myself. At the very end of the game, instead of 8th period, at my goal call after it was done, I said 8th overtime. Like, there was those little mental mistakes. So what I learned from that is, just keep it as simple as possible. Don't say more than you have to. Just call what's going on in front of you. And that's the biggest takeaway from me. But it's so weird because it's a week after, and I still don't think it's really set into me that this was historic. I know it was historic, but when you're in it, I just look at it like, wow, what an opportunity. I got to call 2 games in one. What great for my reps. So I was just thrilled about that. But I have to tell you guys, the support that I have received from that game call, I couldn't believe it, because you guys know the world of social media. It can be very, very negative, and everybody seemed to be very, really enjoying the game. And that, as a broadcaster, that's all I want. The game is the star, and I'm just there to narrate the action and identify the players so people know what's going on. I'm not trying to step into it or take away from it. I just want to narrate it, and I felt like I accomplished that. And so it was really satisfying for me just as an individual, because I still battle my confidence in the play-by-play role. I feel sometimes like, that imposter syndrome. Do I know the game well enough to actually be calling it? But after that game, I felt like I hung in there for 8 periods of hockey. And now I feel like I can say to people, yeah, I do play-by-play. So it was a really lovely game.
Well, Leah, I think just going to say, I speak for everybody. First off, you're absolutely killing it. And what you're doing for female play-by-play broadcasters is unbelievable. So, and there's no doubt in most people's mind. If anybody has that doubt, then, I mean, those people don't know what they're talking about. You obviously know the game very well, and you're obviously, gonna call many more games. So, even though, you were saying you were just struggling with confidence a little bit, and I struggle with, confidence as well, because I have to live up to the, the great work that Dave Minuk and Drew Mindell do on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So, just wanted to get that in there, that there was nobody more proud of you than, the 800 or so thousand Winnipeggers, and I guess Manitobans as well. We can't forget about the other Manitobans, but just wanted to get that in there. You're doing an awesome job.
Well, thank you, Ez. I appreciate that.
Saturday morning, you're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Our guest is Leah Hextall, discussing her experience calling the 5 overtime game for the NCAA regionals last week. And I think we're going to also talk a little bit about the Jets. I turn it now over to my buddy, Dave Minuk.
Well, yeah, we do know that you're also covering the Winnipeg Jets for CJB. You're writing articles for them, and you're doing your sound bites for them. So what have been your overall impressions of this team? I mean, it's been such an unusual year, but what have you thought about the Winnipeg Jets to date?
Guys, it's interesting because I think this is one of the best looking Jets teams that I've seen in a while. I know that we always go back to 2018 when they went to the Western Conference Final and was a heartbeat away from going to the Cup. But when you look, I heard you guys speaking prior about the line combinations up front, and, do we stick with, the new line combo of, Connor, Scheifele, and Ehlers, or what do we do? The beauty thing is when you look at their forward core, it's even their fourth line. I mean, it's stacked, and it gives Paul Maurice, and I think he hit it. He said that line combination can work against different matchups, but then he has the ability to play around with 2 great centers in Dubois and Stasny. He can up and down. Kopp can come up to the top 6 if they need him, but he can stay on that line, which is the most important, in my opinion, the Lowry line, and what they've been able to do to shut down other teams' top lines. Yes, the defense, we're always talking about our defense, but I really think that, Derek Forbort has come in. I think he has done a very strong job. And this is a player that they brought in on a PTO. They've done some moves to make themselves better this year that I think have stabilized them in a way that we haven't seen before. And, then there's Connor Hellebuyck just being Connor Hellebuyck. And if you have a goalie, you have a chance. And you guys know that more than anyone. He took some criticism at the beginning of the year because they said he wasn't playing up to his Vezina caliber. But I really think that he has given them a chance to win whenever he's in the net pretty much. So I really think he's starting to come along now. So, and we're seeing a different thing. But I like this team. And I know there's been a lot of talk about what do they do at the deadline. And we're always wanting to see them go out and get something like a defense piece. But guys, no one wants to take on salary. No one wants to take it on. So if you're bringing a star over, you're not going to get that retention of salary from the other team. We're going to be in a flat cap for, I think, like the next 3 to 4 seasons personally, because these teams are taking a bath here right now in COVID. So, I think this is a team that can make some noise. Do I think they're a Stanley Cup champion? It's hard to say. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've been paying so much attention to the North Division that I feel so disconnected to the rest of the league. I've barely seen, I'm down in the States still. And this is the first time where, the other night I watched Vegas and LA. And I hadn't seen Vegas play. And I was like, my God, they're good. And I know they're good, but I hadn't seen them physically play. So it's really, it's kind of hard to say what they should do because we don't really know, but I think in the North, they can definitely compete and they can definitely get out of the North. And if they do that, then they have this beautiful opportunity to be what would be the conference finals, the Final Four, and go from there. And I think they're built for it.
And Leah, I was just going to say, you better watch some Pittsburgh Penguins games because your cousin isn't going to be too happy if you're not watching those games, right?
I know. And I it's so funny because I'm like, I have no idea what's going on with Pens right now. But, I'll check in every once in a while. I've been so involved with college for the last 2 weeks that I just don't know what's going on. But besides the Jets, but I will definitely keep an eye on them as well. It's a little fan base there now for them because I want him to be successful.
Well, I was going to ask about that's got to be the weirdest part. Never mind a 5 overtime game, but seeing your cousin Ron Hextall as the general manager of the hated in-state Pittsburgh Penguins, that just has to be, when that came across the wire, when you got a text about that, your eyes must have bugged out of your head saying, no, this can't be. This has got to be an early April Fool's joke. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's funny, Drew, because that's what you would think. When that job came open and I saw it and, Rutherford was stepping away, I sent an article and I just texted it to Ron and I said, well, isn't this interesting? And he didn't text me back. And that's how I knew he was going for it because Ron keeps everything close to the chest. It was very well known in Philadelphia that there were no leaks. He wasn't one of those people who, and in his camp, they kept it very close. And I think that's a great way to do business. If you're not a part of the team, why do you need to know what's going on inside? And Ron is someone who keeps things close to the vest, as they say. So I had been tipped off by one of my friendly insiders that he had a second interview. So I sent him a text and I said, I heard you had a second interview, rooting for you. And he responded and he said, thanks. And in my head, I went, he got the job. And the next day they announced it because I don't think he would have responded to me if it was still in process. Sure. So it was really interesting. I couldn't be more happy for him. I think, wow, it is crazy because, it's such a rivalry, as you guys know. But at the end of the day, I think, this is a franchise that he can go into. And I think he's the right guy for the job in this moment. He's going to have some really difficult decisions as a general manager with that team. You have Malkin and Crosby. And yes, you want to keep them. But, can you keep them? They're going to be aging. They're still so dominant. But it's and they've got some cupboards to fill down in Pittsburgh. That's just a fact. And that's Ron's bread and butter. He loves the draft. It's his favorite thing. So I think he'll do a real good job there. And, he just has to keep Berkey in check. So other than that, that'll be good. But I'm really happy for him. But it's weird because, I grew up cheering for the Flyers. Ron played when I was little and, from the time I was 8 till I was graduated high school. So I was a Flyers diehard. And then, and then he became the GM and, I was so excited and I just root. And then the fallout happened, right? And, he gets dismissed from the job and I didn't think it was a fair dismissal. And, but that's the business of hockey. We all know that. And so now it's kind of like, blood is thicker than water. And there's a little bit of me that's like, you know what? I kind of hope that Pittsburgh goes like this and Philly goes like this. And that's just, that's kind of how I feel right now. But it's exciting to have him just back in hockey, because he deserves to be in hockey, because he's a good hockey man.
Bringing it back to the Jets, Leah, earlier we were talking about the forward lines, and Scheifele, Ehlers, and Connor. I mean, to no one's surprise, that line is successful. I mean, offensive dynamite, on all three players. Do you think that Stastny, Wheeler, and Dubois will eventually sort of find their offensive footing, or do you think that maybe this is our illegal curve question of the day? That's why I'm asking it to you. Do you think that maybe the Jets are a little too top heavy right now when it comes to their offensive firepower?
Yeah, it's a very good question too, because when you look at that top line right now, there's so much dynamic offense on it. And you have to only question, is that too much? Is that too much? Is that too much speed? Is that too much talent? Now does Mark Scheifele become the assist guy instead of the finisher because he's got these two elite wingers that are playing with him with such speed, or is it the other way around? Who's the defensive conscience of that line? That's a big thing. And when you look at Stastny and Dubois, they have those defensive conscience. They have the ability to be the playmaker and, make sure, as, two centers that can both play center so well, but can also play on the wing. I just don't know. I look at Wheeler and Dubois and Stastny, and to me, there's something about that line that it feels like it's missing a little bit of flair. And I hope that makes sense. I feel like it needs, these are three guys that are so talented and three players that are so talented, but they're all kind of a little bit similar. And I almost feel like there needs to be a bit of a spark on that line, but we'll see, right? It's very new into it. And I heard you guys say before, listen, this is it truly, I believe we can guarantee the Jets, if they continue to go the way they're going, are going to make the playoffs. So why not see what we have right now? Why not try it against the teams we know we're going to be facing in the playoffs, so we can see what works, and the Jets can continue to see what works against different matchups while they have this opportunity. But I just don't know. I like the looks of things, especially that top line, but I don't know. I think that second line, I don't know if it's going to last. Maybe that's my verdict.
Yeah, no, I think those are some really good points that you make about the second line, because there's no doubt, I think, in anybody that's been watching the Jets as of late, that Scheifele, Connor, and Ehlers, that's working, and it's obvious because those are the three most talented offensive players. But that second line definitely has been good, but they haven't been great. So I think that's definitely a good point that you make. It's something to watch to see if Paul Maurice switches that up a little bit.
And sorry, as I was just going to say, and we have to remember that it's great that they're top heavy and they're putting the puck in the net. That's great in regular season play. But as we all know in the playoffs, those top lines, your top six get shut down, and you need that secondary scoring from your bottom six. So if those lines are going to get shut down, maybe we do need to disperse the talent, trickle it down a little bit. But, I'm not Paul Maurice, and I think he knows a little bit more than me, but that's just my little opinion, and everybody has one. So we'll see if it's worth anything. But, a line like that top line, when you start going into games now that people know it's together, they're gonna combat that with strategy on how to shut them down. So that second line is gonna have to produce. So will it be able to do so? We'll
Absolutely.
see.
And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the salary cap earlier, and how, GMs just, they can't take on, any cap space. And that's why, you heard Chevy in his press conference, I forget how long ago that was, Dave, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. But, he talked about kind of money in, money out. And I made the joke, it kind of seemed like I was taking, financial accounting again at University of Winnipeg. But based on the fact that, it doesn't seem like the Jets are going to bring in a big contract, are you kind of leaning towards more of, a move that you bring in a player in the last year of his contract? Like, obviously David Savard, has been linked to the Jets because of, the connection with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and just the fact that he's a really good, solid right-handed defenseman. But are you thinking that if Chevy does make a move, it's most likely going to be for a defenseman, that doesn't have any, years left on his contract?
It probably will have to be, when you look at, all of those financial things. And this is the part of the game that I hate, guys, most of all. I hate talking contracts. I hate doing the math, because I don't do math in my head very well. So I'm always one of those people who's like, oh my goodness, when we have to go to contract situations. But, the other thing that we have to look at too is, like, really how much are they truly going to do to make this team better? Like, is Savard really, what is he going to do? Is that going to put it over the top? Because if it's not, is it worth it? it's just one of those time periods that I know everybody wants to win, and I know the window to win is small, but this is a different year. And I really think there's going to be a lot of trepidation by general managers to make moves. And we still do have the quarantine. It might not be 14 days anymore, but it's still 7. So that's 7 days off, and then you're going right into almost playoffs. Like, how much time does this player have to gel with the team before we're rocking and rolling in the postseason? It's just such a weird time, and I think there's going to be a lot of thought put into it. But, I think that's the only way you have to go. Ezzy, I don't think you're going to bring somebody in with multiple years, because don't forget, we've got some major players that are going to be coming up with contract needs sooner or later here. And one of them is 55 in the next few years. And, he's going to be so coveted. And, I really feel for general managers right now in trying to make moves, because it's just not an easy thing to do in this moment with so much uncertainty around what's going to happen within the league due to the pandemic.
Leah, how likely do you think it is that we see you guys come up from the Moose? I mean, you've got a number of young, talented players that could, in theory, come up, play. You've got Ville Heinola, who's now on the taxi squad. You've got David Gustin, Christian Vesalainen. So how likely is it, do you see, if the Jets don't go the route of making a trade, that they maybe just look internally and think, okay, we've got a number of young prospects who have been having success in the AHL. We can just bring those guys up, and if we need to, fit them into our lineup?
Dave, I love that point, and I think that's an excellent one. We sometimes forget about the fact that this is an organization that is so strong at draft and developing, and that Pascal Vincent down on the Moose is really turning them into Winnipeg Jets players right before our eyes, but yet we don't necessarily see the Moose as much because the Jets dominate our headlines. And when you mentioned just the names that you did, we just have to look back to Jansen Harkins. I mean, he got brought up towards the end of the season and looked like he just was dropped in and fit in. And that's what the Moose do. They make these players ready to rock and roll, become Winnipeg Jets immediately by even using the same language. Paul Maurice and Pascal, they speak the same language when they talk hockey to these players. So that transition is so smooth. And I truly think, listen, with Ville, there's a little bit of a size, he's still growing into the man he's going to be and whatnot, but does that mean he can't play? Does that mean that we can't look at those options? I don't think so. I think that's honestly a great path for the Jets to take. And especially if they don't make a move and they know that this is probably going to happen, getting those young players some games before the postseason, some of those games that maybe once we know that it's locked in and they're going to the playoffs, that they can get a little bit of, reps under their belt, because that's what it's all about, feeling comfortable and getting them ready to play. But I honestly think in this day and age, that might be the best thing to go with. And I know some people probably don't like that idea because they'll say, oh yeah, but they're not proven or they're not ready. Well, they can't be proven until they get the opportunity to. So let's go.
The only thing more exhausting than 5 overtimes is spending 30 minutes with the legal curve. That's a truism in life. Leah Hextall is a good friend of the program. She's a play-by-play broadcaster. She also covers the Winnipeg Jets for CJOB. Leah, so good to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. All the best, and we'll talk again real soon.
Drew, Ezzy, Dave, thank you so much, guys. It was my pleasure. And keep doing what you're doing and take care of yourselves and be safe.
Likewise, Leah.
Thanks,
take
Leah.
care.
You too.
Thanks very much. There she goes, Leah Hextall, joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. What a great interview. So great to catch up with Leah. Saturday morning, a little bit after 10 o'clock. Welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. To those of you who are just joining us, so great to see so many of you in the chat. While you're there, if you haven't already done it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. Leave us some comments. We love to hear from you every Saturday morning. And of course, post game after every Winnipeg Jets game, we're live here with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show and the Illegal Curve post game show. Dave Minuk, you have something you want to say. I can see you're eager. You're right next to the mic. What's on your mind, my friend?
No, I was just going to say, I want to let everyone know in the comments or who are leaving comments on our post game show on iChat, on iTunes, sorry, that we appreciate it. I love it. Like it's picked up. And that's kind of the nice thing is that we appreciate it. And again, I'm just reiterating, and I'm a broken record, but otherwise, when Ezzy said he was a broken record, I was wondering what broken record is he? Would he be an AC/DC record? Would he be a Motley Crue record? I didn't know what kind of record he was going to be, but anyways.
Well, with that, he's ZZ Top. There's no question. He's ZZ Top with that.
I was going to say with my kids and the amount of... Yeah, no, I was going to say probably right now with the music that I was listening to, probably Sharon Lois and Bram.
Anyways, so sorry, I was digressing, but I just it really is appreciated, and we love when people will drop those comments down on iTunes. It helps us, and again, we love the likes, we love the shares.
Yeah, no, comments are fine, but smash the subscribe button. That's what we really care about. Smash it.
Yeah, we appreciate all the support. Is what is the crux of what I'm suggesting.
That's some good crux in there, Dave. This segment of the show, 9 days away from the trade deadline, so we'll talk about the NHL trade deadline. 9 days away. It's brought to you, this segment, by Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty, official realtors of Illegal Curve Hockey. When 95% of your clients come via referral, it shows your commitment to honesty, integrity, and a total dedication to client satisfaction. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, come shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia online at zappiagroup.com. So, we're into the nitty gritty here when it comes to the trade deadline, guys. 9 days away, like I said. Kevin Cheveldayoff sat down, or was on the phone at least, with Pierre LeBrun, talking about the trade deadline, talking about his plans or his potential plans.
Was he? I don't know. I read that article. I didn't get any sense that he said anything of relevance.
He didn't. I was going to say he was his usual circumspect self, but he was on the phone with Pierre LeBrun. Whether or not he said anything of relevance or anything of interest is a separate issue. Okay. It's undoubtedly that he was on the phone, unless he sent an imposter to do it in his stead. But I highly doubt that.
I read the article. I read the headline. I thought to myself, oh, okay, well, maybe Kevin Cheveldayoff said something interesting to Pierre LeBrun, and it's behind a paywall, so some people may not be able to read it. And I read it, and I thought to myself, what did I learn exactly?
What you learned is, and here's a quote, I like our defense. It's not a household name type of defense, Cheveldayoff said, but it is one that I think operates more by committee, so to speak, and kind of accentuates each other. Sure, we're not the tightest in certain areas, but there's a lot of teams with lots of weaknesses. So if we find something that we think can upgrade us, we'll take a look at it. But at the end of the day, you can't plan on injuries. You just don't know. We like our group. It's gotten us to this point. We'll see where this goes as we head into the trade deadline. So again, very Chevy speak for nothing. A lot of words that doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot. But let me ask you guys this. Sorry, Ezzy. With Nathan Beaulieu now out for the year, and we know he's not coming back. He had surgery for his torn labrum. He's out for the playoffs. He's out for the regular season.
You're not a doctor, but you'll take a look.
Well, I mean, I'm going to believe what Paul Maurice said in that front. Doesn't that almost make it incumbent that the Jets go out, and even if it's just a depth guy, not necessarily a guy who's going to be in your top six, although I think most people would agree that the Jets need to get, they would be better with a different top six defenseman or a top four defenseman specifically. Don't, just for the sake of depth and any potential future needs, the Jets need to go out and acquire at least some defensemen right now?
Yes, and before we found out, like, we knew Nathan Beaulieu was obviously injured, but before we found that out, I mean, that we thought that the Jets might acquire defense, but I think this does change things. I don't think it changes things drastically, but yeah, there's a chance that Chevy could acquire a couple of defensemen, right? And we've put lots of names out there, and there's players like Jamie Oleksiak, who's a left shot defenseman. Like, I'm not saying that the Jets are in on Oleksiak right now, but I do think, Drew, that there's a better chance now than there was maybe a week ago that we're going to see multiple defensemen acquired by the Jets. Again, I'm not saying that with certainty, but I'm just saying, like, that would kind of be logical, just based on Beaulieu being out, because now you've lost your quote unquote seventh defenseman. Like, Logan Stanley has passed Beaulieu, so if Beaulieu was healthy, Logan Stanley would probably remain in the lineup. And sure, you've got Sami Niku as well, but you can never have enough defensemen, right? Like, we've talked about that, guys, that notion of having, 9 or 10 NHL defensemen, especially when you get into the playoffs, right, Dave? Mm-hmm. So yeah, there always is that chance, but Leah, I think, we talked about this in the interview, but Leah mentioned, the cap and how much it's coming into play, and it always comes into play, but especially now, I think that's why you haven't seen any more moves, guys. Like, I'm surprised that we haven't seen more moves. Like, we've seen the Eric Stahl to Montreal trade, but we're only 9 days away, Drew. You just mentioned that. So you're going to start to see trades happen, I think, Monday and Tuesday. Obviously, James Duthie is probably texting the GMs and asking them to hold off till the 12th. I'm joking, obviously, but I think there are going to be some big moves happening early next week. And I would be pretty surprised at this point if Chevy doesn't bring in at least one defenseman, just because of the way, the defense has played the whole year, and also with Beaulieu out right now.
Just quickly, Dave, before you get in here, some news out of Columbus. Jack Roslovic, a healthy scratch for the Blue Jackets in their game today. So, things are going from bad to worse in Columbus. We know that
Tort's going to do Torch things, right?
Well, I mean, Torts is getting fired at season, or he's done in Columbus. That seems pretty clear that the time has just run out on him in Columbus. But it's just wanted to make note that Jack Roslovic, a healthy scratch for the Blue Jackets. I'm not sure if they're playing this afternoon or tonight, but whenever they're playing, Jack Roslovic won't be in the Blue Jackets lineup.
And it's unfortunate, I'm just going to say, Dave, quickly, and then I'll let you get in here. It's unfortunate because you remember when Roslovic, started with the Blue Jackets, he was already in Columbus, of course, and he was a house on fire, picking up multiple point games, and it was looking really good for him. So, unfortunate to see for him that he's now a healthy scratch.
Yeah, no, there's no question. Just to answer Jets free question in the chat, he asked how much they would have with Beaulieu on LTIR, and it frees up $1.25 million for the Jets.
Plus, they still have money left for little.
They have about $4.75 million in LTIR space right now. So I think if the Jets needed to make a move, that they could have the space to do it. I mean, look, you're not looking to add guys if you can get an Ekholm. But I mean, look, guys, I don't think any of us think Nashville's making a trade unless you're going to sell the farm. And I don't think Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to sell the farm. So I think I would really remove Nashville as a trading partner. And again, do you have guys that could be your backup? I mean, Ezzy's 100% right. You need at least 10 defensemen. Right now, the Jets have been lucky. They haven't had to go to the depth, really. But, I mean, if you look at it, right now you've got your 6 plus Niku, Heinola, and Noje on your taxi squad. And then, again, I'd be loath to pull up a Dylan Sandberg at this point. I think he's where he needs to be. I think he's doing what he needs to do. So I don't know that you've got, Chisholm's too young, Kovacevic is young, Gavanke is too young. So you really don't have someone on the Moose in terms of pulling them up to be that kind of. So you've got, like I said, you got the 6 that they've got in the lineup plus a 3 on the taxi squad. To me, a guy, if you can get a David Savard, like how much sense does that make? Columbus seems to be falling back out of it. We thought maybe they're going to be in it. They're in 6th place right now, I believe, in their division. Not that far back of 4th. They're only 3 points back of Nashville. But I don't know that things – I think I wouldn't go that far because, again, there's a lot of 4-point games, right? So it always can be turned around. But I think if you can provide a guy like David Savard, who, again, we've talked about him, would be very good in that shutdown, big, tough, rugged defenseman, kind of a perfect prototypical guy you'd love to have in the playoffs, who can handle the net front presence for the Winnipeg Jets. Really good friends with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I believe I've read this, that he's one of Dubois' best friends. Probably really goes well in terms of, integration. I think Matthew Perreault would like it because he'd have another Frenchman on the team, and, the Francais would be flowing. But, I just think there is that element that's important, that comfort, right? Not having to get into a whole new system and be completely foreign. You'd at least have some comfort there. So David Savard, again, is a guy who seems to make sense from the perspective, and that's the reason why I think he's leaped up to the number 1 spot in the TSN trade pay board.
Well, then that's what I was going to say, Dave. I think there's going to be, quite a few teams after him. Like we know that, it's no secret how good he was in not just, last year against Toronto in that first round, but Savard isn't a rookie. What is he? 26 years old, I believe. Like he's not. This is a guy who's a veteran.
He's got at least 8 years. Yeah, at least.
Yeah. So there's going to be some other teams after, but there are the connections with Dubois and Columbus and Winnipeg have made some trades, obviously. So we'll wait and see what happens. But even with that little extra cap space for Nate Beaulieu, I don't think anybody is expecting the Jets to go after anybody that has a lot of cap space term on their contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which makes Savard, obviously he's been at the front of the line. Alex Goligoski, you're hearing a lot about lately out of Arizona, as a guy who's a potential. Again, he's a UFA at season's end, and he's got a big cap hit. But at this stage of the season, there's basically nobody on a 1-year deal that the Jets can't afford,
right,
to bring into there, even 2 guys if that's how it worked out. I mean,
I think it comes down to guys, do you want a left shot defenseman or do you want a right shot defenseman? Like,
well, let me ask you that.
That's the big question. And you mentioned Nathan Beaulieu, who's obviously a left shot defenseman, but he's more of a third pairing guy. But if you're going to bring David Savard in, I mean, that's probably pushing Tucker Pullman out of the lineup, right? Like that would be that's your third best defenseman on the right side, right? Obviously Neil Pionk's number one. You got Dylan DeMello there. So that kind of to me is, the big question. And I'm not sure because Matthias Ekholm, we've talked about that. He has played a little bit on the right side, but he's a left shot defenseman. So again, who does that move down? Like, is Josh Morrissey going to become a third pairing defenseman?
Well, based on his play, a lot of people would say that might be where he needs to be.
Well, I don't think that's fair at all.
Okay. I mean, I'm just saying that, if you look at, Morrissey certainly has been the target for a lot of, I'm going to say, use the word vitriol, but for lack of better word right now, that his performance has not been commensurate with his salary this season. And I think that's probably, that's a reasonable comment that his struggles have continued this year. And when he looked the best is when he was with Dylan DeMello. And of course, DeMello is now with Logan Stanley, but Morrissey did have a good game Corsi-wise last night against the Leafs. I think Morrissey's struggles come when he has to face those neck front physical battles, and a guy like David Savard, really helps in that area because Savard is known for keeping the chances away from the high danger area. He's good at clearing out that high danger zone, and he's a bigger guy, he's a more physical guy, similar, probably an upgrade on Tucker Pullman, but similar in their physicality in front of the net. And that's why I think Savard, for so many people, makes so much sense for the Jets, but it's probably going to be a bit of a bidding war because he's, the apple of the eye for a lot of different general managers as we sit here 9 days away from the trade deadline, Dave.
Yeah, and think about what you just said. High danger chances. What do the Jets give up a lot of? High danger chances. So, I mean, doesn't it make a lot of sense to have a guy who would fit within that system and is kind of exactly what they need? And again, you kind of have to reward this group for what they've been able to do and who they have on the team. And if you can get a guy like Savard, and again, I couldn't tell you what the cost is. We don't know. We aren't hearing exactly what folks are looking for David Savard, or what Jarmo Kekalainen, I should say, is looking for, or what he's being offered, or what the scuttlebutt is in that regard in terms of what he might be asking. But again, if it's not a high ask, if it's, again, whatever your draft picks are, you don't even know what the draft pick is worth this year, right? And again, don't get me wrong, the Jet scouts are still doing their work. We've heard from them. They're still working and prepared and ready for the draft as it goes forward. But I'm just saying this will be a draft unlike any other, and I think the value of those picks isn't necessarily, especially with the Jets team that's going to finish, probably in the upper echelon of the league anyways. So it's not going to be like a super high pick, regardless of what round it's in. I'm just saying if you can get a Savard type, he just makes sense for this Jets team. And again, you're right, Drew. Jarmo Kekalainen is not a dummy. He's a smart GM, and especially if the pool now has narrowed or dried up because Nashville is no longer offering Ellis and Ekholm. Mm-hmm. Well, wait a second. Now Savard has become a much more premium, even though he was a UFA. He's become much more premium because
was Nashville ever offering Ellis? I don't think that.
No, they weren't. But there was some talk out there that maybe Ellis would be. I think Friedman had said something like maybe Ellis is available instead of.
It was in 31 Thoughts a couple weeks ago, just sort of as a passing mention more than just sort of Elliot's.
I was going to say Ellis. I really like Ellis. I don't think he's going anywhere. But
no, I don't think. I don't think.
Point is well taken.
Yeah, and I just think it was just kind of like if Ekholm's not available now, maybe Ellis and that sort of thing. But again, like I said, I just think what does it do is it makes Savard more valuable to Kekalainen because now there's more teams that have now circled away from Nashville and now they're going back to Columbus and they're saying, okay, well, Savard wasn't necessarily our first choice, but we're definitely interested and we think he could be the guy we need to get into the playoffs.
And it might cost you a first round pick, guys. But again, like I appreciate what Dave is saying in terms of like this isn't considered as strong as draft as previous years, and it has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of players in the draft haven't played as many games, right? That's first and foremost. But I think, it doesn't change much in terms of, are you willing to trade that first round pick to make your team better for a playoff push? And we've talked about that. Yes, this is the year that you trade one of those first round picks. Like we've seen it in the Paul Stastny trade back in 2018. We saw it the next year with Kevin Hayes, right? So, it might be a first round pick. Originally, I was thinking because Savard is in the last year of his contract, it might only cost you a second round pick. But regardless, Dave, it's not going to cost you as much as it would to acquire Matthias Ekholm. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Take a break, take a pause for a second. When we come back after these commercials, I want you guys to tell me what you would be willing to give up for David Savard from Columbus. Take a breath. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. So great to see so many of you joining us live on our YouTube channel, chatting away. Nice to see that. Of course, we're also on all of our social media platforms. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, joined by Ezra Ginsburg, joined by Dave Minuk. This segment is brought to you by Bernstein's Deli, official deli of Illegal Curve Hockey, and home of the Illegal Curve Sandwich. Located in the Corden Village Mall, Bernstein's Deli has been Winnipeg's deli destination for over 30 years. For more information, find them on Facebook or at bernsteinsdeli.com. Ezzy, with Passover coming to an end, you can definitely sink your teeth back into a not kosher for Passover Illegal Curve sandwich. That being said, my favorite part of Passover was undoubtedly right in the heart of it when you went to visit our friends at Bagelsmith and had a big bagel, which is definitely not kosher for Passover.
No, it's not. And thank you for throwing me under the bus. So obviously,
right under the bus.
Rabbi Matt Leibel is not going to like to hear that I broke Passover. But yes, I did.
Did you ever start Passover? Can you break it if you don't start it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hold on. I can throw Ezzy under the bus. On Sunday, I was driving down in River Heights, and I saw him walking into McDonald's.
You did? Did you really?
Oh yeah.
Okay, first, you know what? You guys are terrible. Like throwing me under the bus, twice, not just once. Like I was already thrown under the bus, and then Dave decided to.
I backed that bus right up over.
Hang on, were you with your kids, or were you just going to McDonald's by yourself?
He was with the family.
Okay. I was getting Naomi and I were getting our kids Happy Meals. Okay. First of all, so there was no breaking Passover then. I did also go to Olive Garden this week, by the way, and have the breadsticks. So I've broken Passover a couple of times, but did have a Seder at my mother-in-law's house. I have been eating matzah. Did light the candles last night, of course. So I mean, I'm doing my part here. But yes, I've eaten bread 3 or 4 times over the last week.
Attaboy. It's nice to see your dedication last that long. That's a funny comment from Mike in the chat who's saying, Ezzy, you need to find Jesus. I mean, I think we're all backwards on that front, but that's okay in any event. Before the break, I asked you guys, what would you give up? What would you be comfortable giving up in exchange for David Savard? And want to see the answers coming in the chat room as well. So that question can be posed to the audience that are watching us on YouTube, listening to us, wherever you may be tuning into the program. What are you comfortable giving up? Specifics here, please. What would you be comfortable giving up for David Savard, Dave?
Well, I mean, like you're happy to give up draft picks, really. I mean, look, draft picks are important. You want to restock the cupboard. The Jets don't have a tremendous number of forward draft of prospects, right? You've got a ton of defensive prospects, and we've gone. I listed them all previously when I was talking about the guys who aren't yet necessarily ready to make that jump up to the Winnipeg Jets. But you've got at least 4 or 5 good defensive prospects who are with the Moose, who are going to be within that organization, filling that area of need for the Winnipeg Jets for the coming years. In terms of forward prospects, though, you really just have David Gustafsson and Christian Vesalainen. Christian Reichel has an outside chance. He's a hard worker. But realistically, in terms of draft picks, Reichel and Vesalainen and Gustafsson are your 2 guys. So you always have to have an eye to the future. That's what Kevin Cheveldayoff has to do. He has to remember that you have to restock that cupboard, right? Like you've got Nathan Smith, who's playing right now in college. He's a Jets draft pick that could be turning pro, maybe not necessarily after this year, but soon. But that's one thing. So you can't just be like, well, just trade away your second and your third and dump it all and be done with it. Because again, eventually, I didn't mention Cole Perfetti. Of course, Cole Perfetti is another high-end forward that the Jets have. But I just think it's one of those things that you need to just be cognizant of, is that you do need to restock the cupboard with quality young players to come up and eventually replace these guys. So, but at the same time, I still think that the Jets are in a win now. You've got a Vezina quality goaltender in Connor Hellebuck. You've got a dynamic forward group, and the defense is the one area, again, that, you can call it whatever you want, but it's the one area we know you can try and sugarcoat it, but it's the one area that right now isn't the best for the Winnipeg Jets. So if that's the case, and you can make a move that's not going to impact your roster, then I think you do it. I think you trade away, maybe like someone was saying, a second and a third. You give back Columbus the third that you got in the trade with the Line and Dubois trade, and you trade away your second, or maybe it's a first. And again, like I said,
hang on. Are you comfortable giving up a first for a rental here?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, really?
I am because look, again, I think that first of all, the Jets have done well in their drafting, right? Look at some of the guys. David Gustafsson's a second-round pick. Sure. Right? I'm not suggesting that they haven't hit on all their firsts, but the Jets have done well. Mason Appleton's a 6th. Yeah. Jansen Harkins is 2nd. Andrew Kopp's a 5th. So you've got guys who have found success in your lineup who aren't only first-round picks. You've been able to do it because you have a very good scouting department. So I would be comfortable to give up the first because, to what Ezzy just said, you don't even know what the hell a first is going to look like, because you could pick a guy in the second round who ends up being the best player in this draft, most likely not the second. But the reality is you can give it up, I think, because if you can get a guy like Savard and he's going to stabilize your defensive core and he's going to limit those high danger chances, I think you reward this group for what they've been able to do, which is compete with the top teams in the North.
Guys, it's fairly simple here. I agree with Dave. I mean, it's most likely draft picks that you're giving up for Savard. I don't know if it's going to require a first round pick. I'd be much more comfortable giving up a second rounder and maybe a 2022 third rounder, or maybe you trade a player such as a Sami Niku and a second rounder, something like that. But yeah, if you're asking us, Drew, if you would give up a late first round pick for David Savard, I think I would do it because, Savard is a guy that you can re-sign, first of all. Like that's something that you're going to have to factor in. He obviously won't have to be someone you protect in the expansion draft, right? So that you have that going for you. If you acquire a guy like Ekholm, whether or not Nashville trades Ekholm, you would have to, in theory, protect him, because why would you acquire him with a year left on his contract if you're not going to protect him, which would mean a guy like Dylan DeMello would have to be exposed in the expansion draft. Or I guess, in theory, Logan Stanley as well. But I'm with Dave. I think you're talking about draft picks. And yeah, you've got lots of good young players coming up through the system, not just Ville Heinola, not just Cole Perfetti, Dylan Sandberg. Dave talked about all these guys. David Gustafsson, Declan Chisholm, I think, is an underrated prospect in the Moose system. Like, you've got a Christian Vesalainen. I mean, we forget he's only 21 years old, right, guys? So at a certain point, you can't just hoard draft picks. So I think it's simple. If you think David Savard is going to possibly win you a round or two, move the pick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got to say, guys, I'm surprised to hear both of you say that you'd give up a first-round pick for David Savard.
He's a good defenseman, Dave. Pardon me, Drew.
I'm Drew. Nice to meet you. It's only been about 38 years.
No, yeah, exactly. He's a really solid defenseman. Like, again, for those who aren't familiar with his game, this isn't just a big body, that clears guys in front of the net. Like, this is a solid defenseman that can chip in a little bit offensively. I think he's only got 1 goal on the year, but I think his best year in the NHL was 10 or 11 goals. So, I mean, this is a good, solid defenseman. He's a guy that can slot in your top four. It could be Morrissey and Savard on your top pair if that's what you choose to go with. So, yeah, you might have to give up a first rounder. Look what the Tampa Bay Lightning had to do last year. What did they give up for Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman? First round picks.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I'm not saying the Jets will win the cup. I'm not saying the Jets will win the cup, Drew, if they acquire David Savard, but it makes the team a lot better.
And I'm of the opinion, and this is why I'm surprised you guys to say that. I think if the Jets were offering a first round pick, I think that the trade would get done pretty much as soon as that pick gets offered.
Well,
I think that's what Frank Line is holding out for, Dave.
Well, and that's fine. And again, like I said, I don't know what the market value is for David Savard. So that's why I'm saying, like, whatever the market value is, we're quibbling over whether it's a first, a second, a third. What I'm suggesting is we don't actually know what it is. And so if you tell me what market value is, then I'll tell you whether it's worth paying it or not. That's, I think, the crux of what Ezzy and I were just suggesting.
I'll tell you what's nice, having John Mattis on the show and getting another beard here in the screen.
Ezra, come on, man. You're killing me here. You've got me doubled up here, basically.
John, there's certain things in life that you shouldn't be aspirational towards, and I think Ezzy's beard would certainly qualify as one of them. Pleased to be joined now on the show, on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, by John Mattis, the senior hockey writer for thescore.com, a good friend of the program. John, nice to see you on this Saturday morning. How are things? Hope everyone's well. Hope everyone's healthy.
Yeah, things are good. Different setup here. I've never seen you guys face to face like this. I realize it's not actual. We're sitting at a coffee shop or something, but it sure is a little more human than on the phone. So great to be on, guys.
And we appreciate it. Yeah, when the corporate overlords decided that the radio station needs to cease to exist, we had to pivot. But this is what we've pivoted towards. And faces for radio, undoubtedly. But there's still people are willing to stick with us despite our good looks, or I'll call them the good looks at the very least. John, we're talking about the trade deadline, and of course from the Winnipeg Jets perspective, because that's what we focus on here. I guess sort of on a macro level, we sit here 9 days away from the trade deadline. There's been the one deal so far, Eric Staal going from Buffalo to Montreal, which is, I think, really the definition of getting the hell out of a bad situation there. From your perspective, as we sit here 9 days away, do you think that this sort of quiet lull that we're in is going to continue? Or do you think that eventually things are going to start to break and things are going to pick up and we're going to have a more, quote unquote, normal trade deadline in what has been a very abnormal year?
I'd say it's somewhere in the middle, my answer. I don't anticipate it being a normal trade year in the terms of the amount of bodies moved, the amount of picks moved, etc. Just because of, one, how the standings are lined up, two, the quarantining aspect of this all, and three, I just think that the market isn't great. Like what's out there that you really want? Like you mentioned, Dave, you've got Staal going to Montreal. It seemed like a big deal, but was it really? I mean, where are they going to deploy him? What kind of impact is he going to have? And you saw the return that Buffalo got. It wasn't anything special. Mm-hmm. So there's that to consider. And at the same time, it's the NHL. And as we get close to the deadline, every year we hear, this year it doesn't seem like much is going to happen. I don't know, guys. Like, you hear the TSN and Sportsnet guys joke constantly about, well, I hope on trade deadline day we can actually talk about something and not just twiddle our thumbs on national TV. So there's a lot of that going on right now, and I think that's probably not going to prove to be entirely true. I think there'll still be movement. I think if you look at a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, their GM's come out multiple times and said, I'm open for business. Some of my top prospects are on the table. If the deal is right, Rasmus Sandin, see you later. Timothy Liljegren, see you later. So there's some potential there, but you wonder if there are going to be some major deals stuck in purgatory, so to speak, where, I don't know, you have a player that you really want to acquire, and, you know, he's got a family situation where leaving to come to Canada is like a big deal, and at the last minute it gets nixed, or you know what I mean? Like, I feel like every year there is one or two of those, and I feel like maybe we'll see a handful of those where there was nothing wrong in terms of the two teams figuring it out until the last minute when things had to be actually finalized. So it'll be interesting. I mean, there's some teams that in my opinion, are a cut above the rest right now that should be going all in. I think that Colorado, like, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I watch them, they're just such a buzzsaw. Last night against St. Louis, a really good team. They just completely control the whole game. And that happens fairly often. I realize they're playing the California teams, a lot here, but it's pretty disgusting what they're able to do out there. So you assume, given last year's debacle in the playoffs where they lose both their goalies and have Michael Hutchinson playing in net, that they will not take a chance at that. So that's the way I'm looking at it from the real true contenders perspective. Is, even though it's a weird year, even though it's a year that we're going to look back on in the same way that we look back on lockout years, where it's, it's still winning the Stanley Cup, but it's just not quite the same. It's a 99%, but not 100% there. You still might win the cup. So you got to push all your chips to the middle of the table. And I think that alone will cause some activity here. And hopefully there's a player out there that isn't being mentioned in the rumor mill that we see get moved that is of significant value, because let's face it, the players out there publicly on the market aren't super interesting or intriguing.
John, you and I agree with you on that. I mean, like there is a Taylor Hall out there and a Jack Eichel there, and I think you'd probably agree that there's higher likelihood that Hall gets moved as opposed to Jack Eichel, just because Jack Eichel is one of the best centers in the league. Obviously, the contract comes into play as well. But you mentioned the Leafs, and the Jets and Leafs obviously just played a couple games, and they've got 4 games left, including a 3-game series in Winnipeg. Like, just watching those 2 games and kind of relating it back to the trade deadline, like, you hear that the Leafs might go after like a Mikael Granlund, or you hear like a Kyle Palmieri. Like, watching that Leafs team last night and a couple of Wednesday night, it doesn't seem to me like they need either one of those players. Like, offense isn't the issue. Like, they look like a pretty well-oiled machine right now. Like, in your opinion, do they even need to acquire anybody prior to the trade deadline?
I think they would be fine up front and on the back end if they didn't do anything. I think in goal, like, they got to do something. I realize that Jack Campbell's on an absolute tear right now, but let's face it, he was a career backup before he got the net because of Frederik Andersen's injury. So even though things are really rosy right now, again, like, if you circle back to Colorado, things really fell apart for them in the playoffs last year as a contender because of goaltending issues. And when you factor in COVID, which I realized was around last year too, but they were in a bubble. When you factor in COVID, like, what happens if, Andersen and Campbell are going into the playoffs completely healthy and one of them ends up on the COVID list? Then it's just the one guy. I mean, I think they need insurance. I don't know if it's going out and getting a name that we're all going to be impressed by, but something. I think they need to add a goaltender. And the Andersen thing is a little weird because he hasn't had a good season, and now he's injured. You wonder about the confidence there. You wonder about, like, how he can sort of jump on a moving train here. Because I don't know about you guys, but one thing that I've thought about throughout the season is how difficult it would be for a goalie to be off, whether it is you're on the COVID list or you're off on an injury from an injury perspective this season, just because there's so many games happening. I feel like goaltending is more of a field game than maybe a forward or defense. So we'll see what happens there. So I think goaltending is sort of the main problem, or the main issue that needs to be addressed by the Leafs. Again, acknowledging the type of run that Campbell's on right now. And then I think also you could say the same thing for their depth at forward and defense. Again, below goalie on the pecking order. But when you look at this team and its trajectory and its window to win, this is their best chance in terms of contracts lining up. Zach Hyman's value has gone through the roof this year, and they may lose him in free agency. So that opens up a hole on the left wing that is already bare. So you wonder what the left wing side looks like next year. You wonder if, guys like Thornton are going to be back, Spezza are going to be back. Like, they've kind of found a nice mix here of acquiring these guys in the offseason, whether it's Simmons, Thornton, Spezza, Bogosian, and they've pretty much seamlessly transitioned into the team. Are all those guys going to be heading on all cylinders, so to speak, next year? Probably not, like, just based on the chances and the numbers and how old these guys are. So they've really got a nice sort of groove here. And again, like, you only have so many years to contend for a Stanley Cup. And with their core, Matthews as a top 5 player in the league, Marner as an absolute, magician out there, Ron and Brody and Muzzin on the back end, like they're a pretty deep team at this point in time. So I think that maybe they don't swing for the fences. Maybe they feel like what's out there isn't worth trading a top prospect like Rasmus Sandin, and that's for Kyle Dubas to decide. But I think they should do something, because we're going to be going into the reserves here in the playoffs with the taxi squads and whatnot. Because let's face it, like, there's some teams out there that are going to play a stupid amount of games down the stretch. The Leafs aren't necessarily one of them, but postponed. All of a sudden, those are getting tacked on to the end of the season. So you wonder how that factors into what the lineups look like, how worn out these guys are getting. So the more capable bodies, NHL caliber bodies you can have on your team, whether it's on the real roster or the taxi squad, all the better.
20 minutes before the top of the hour, you're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all our social media platforms. Our guest is John Mattis, senior hockey writer of thescore.com.
John, a month ago you wrote about the upcoming NHL draft and what to take from it. And, we were just talking about the value of draft picks and whether you should trade a first, a second, a third. And to me, it's a function of, this is a year unlike any other where you really don't know what that value is. So what are your thoughts in terms of trading away draft picks? Because really, I mean, again, to my mind, while we know scouts are still scouting, it's been more limited than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, there's that, and there's the quality of the draft. I guess a part of that is impacted by the inability to watch these guys in person to get a really grasp on the full class. But from what I'm hearing, just the quality from the top of the draft to the end is just not substantial. If you compare it to last year or years prior, it's, when we look back in 10 years on the 2021 draft class, it's not going to stack up against 2003, which is an absolute juggernaut. So that's interesting, right? Because if you're the Leafs, for example, not to keep talking about the Leafs, but just because they have a first round pick and they may be in this market, I think giving away or trading away a first is a lot easier than in years past. I mean, on the flip side, you could argue that, well, you're getting this player that you're acquiring for fewer games because of the tight squeeze here after the deadline into the playoffs. And also there's sort of the underlying theme of, well, how good really is your team? Because everyone's playing just within their division. There's no litmus test of the Leafs playing, I don't know, Colorado, Vegas, St. Louis, those types of teams at least once or twice and getting a feel for where they stack up. The North is kind of perfectly suited for the Leafs as a division that doesn't have a ton of great goalies beyond, the Hellebucks and when he's on, Carey Price and Markstrom. And then the team defense across the division isn't great. So there's a lot of sort of weighing of the situation that needs to be done here. And I guess, Dave, to just, kind of get more to the point with my answer, I think the value is when you juggle all the variables, it would probably be similar to a normal year, except that you have to factor in the draft class. So if, a team comes to you and says, we'd like a first round pick, you counter immediately with, okay, I'd like it to be the 2021 draft, not the 2022. That's going to be a better draft, right? So I think that's how I would approach things if I was a GM, where you don't galaxy brain this too much. And if a player is normally worth the first, then you probably do it. That being said, though, I mean, let's look at the players that are out there in the rumor mill. I'm skeptical about Taylor Hall. Like, I would have Kyle Palmieri ahead of him. I would have Ricard Raquel. Let's assume that he's available, and he's got terms, so that's always a tricky situation. Those two guys ahead of Hall. I just like Hall hasn't been the same since he had his MVP season. He was in Arizona, didn't quite click there. goes to Buffalo. Obviously, that's been a disaster to say the least. So it's like, what are we getting with Taylor Hall? Maybe he's and this isn't to say he's a poor player, but like, is he the star caliber that we thought he was? Is that sort of MVP cloud following him around and vaulting his stock? I just think Palmieri might bring a little more, I guess, dependability, or the probability of him working out is a little bit higher. So, but then you look down the list. I mean, Matthias Ekholm, first rounder. I mean, probably because he's got an extra year. But after that, it gets pretty weak unless you're getting into guys like Darcy Kemper, who obviously would be more of an investment, and that would require quite the package because he's a really good goalie. So compared to other years where there's some guys who are on the trade market that you're like, we're starting with the first rounder and then we're working back from there. This year is a little different in terms of what, at least on the surface, is out there.
John Mattis of The Score is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media feeds. John, you were talking about the North Division, and you're talking about the Leafs and the Jets, and the matchups. There's no home ice advantage to speak of really this year in the playoffs. The Leafs have been the class of the North the entire year. How important are the matchups come playoff time? Or, because it seems, I mean, we were talking about it earlier, the top four is pretty much set in the North Division. I mean, it's 95% chance, for the Jets and the Oilers and the Habs, and the Leafs are 99%. Do you expect to see these teams maybe take their foot a little bit off the gas, as we get a little bit later on in April here, to try and sort of just ensure that they're almost healthy for the playoffs, so they're not, the Jets and the Leafs, if they play at the end of April, aren't killing each other for really not any great reward at that point in the season?
I think that makes sense. I mean, it's a little tricky because you don't want to take your foot off the gas too much, and then you're going into the playoffs a little too confident or a little too laissez-faire. But I think you're onto something there. When you look at the top four there, I don't think it's moving, especially with what's going on in Vancouver right now. Like, I don't know how they're going to, first of all, recover from what's going on with the virus spreading throughout their team in general. That's first and foremost, but also just, how is that team going to look when they return to the ice? Are they going to have an NHL roster essentially? Right. And when they even have their best players, they're not in the top four based on this season. So I think the top four, unless Calgary goes on an absolute tear, and that's going to be difficult because they're going to have to beat a lot of good teams here. I think that top four is solidified. So then you're looking at Edmonton, who is really like the most interesting team in the division heading into the deadline season, because if you're looking at their cap friendly page, this isn't the season that you trade and you make big changes, because this offseason you're losing a lot of players to free agency. You can almost do the refresh this offseason, pick up a guy, and really go after the cup with McDavid and Draisaitl next season. That being said, McDavid and Draisaitl are having insane seasons. So do you want to, again, lose another season with those guys? So they're really interesting in terms of like, what do they look like after the deadline? And obviously they're getting great goaltending from Mike Smith. That's a huge factor. And if that continues, I think there's something to be feared. Montreal kind of sneaking around right now with 33 games played, where the rest of the division is at 37, 38. So they're sitting pretty, and they're going to have a lot of games here coming up. So they're one team for sure to keep an eye on in terms of resting players and kind of, I guess, strategizing towards the playoffs in terms of lineup decision and whatnot. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I think, Toronto since the start of the year has been the best team in the division. I don't think there's been anything to dissuade us. They had a bit of a bump in the road, I guess, a few weeks back now, where they went on a bit of a skid. But the one thing about them that I've been impressed by is in years past, when the going gets tough, when in a game they kind of fall apart, they really fall apart and they lose, 5-1. This year, if they lose, it's going to be 5-4, it's going to be 5-3. There's a little more pushback, and also just protecting the lead when they have it, and being a little tighter defensively. So I think Toronto's the team to be aware of in that division. And I think from there, maybe Montreal and Winnipeg, Edmonton, maybe in the third tier. It's kind of hard. It gets really mushy after Toronto. But in terms of playoff matchups, I mean, at this point, even if I just put my hat on for the Winnipeg Jets, I don't know what's the favored opponent in the first round. You know, if you're given that choice. So to me, it's kind of like, you know, you're going to make it to the playoffs, and then you've got 2 rounds to get out of the Canadian division, and then you're in the semifinals. Like that's a really enticing opportunity given how tight these teams are, while also acknowledging that Toronto's maybe a cut above.
John, just one last question for you here, just kind of moving away from the Canadian division. I know that, you know, that's kind of tough to do because it seems like we've been in that North Division vacuum since mid-January. But, you know, I wanted to ask you about Florida, right? Because there was that scary injury with Aaron Ekblad in his knee and stretchered off, and it was announced he's going to be out for 12 weeks, which basically means, you know, he's probably going to miss the majority of the playoffs. You know, if Florida does end up going far, maybe he comes back. But going back to what you were saying before, like we know the big names out there on defense, right? David Savard or Matthias Ekholm, or you can throw in, you know, I guess, you know, somebody like Jamie Oleksiak, Vince Dunn on St. Louis. But what does Florida do, right? Like, what could they possibly do? You're not going to replace Aaron Ekblad, who's having a great season, by the way, but like you're tied for first place right now in that Central Division, right? Like you're right up there with Tampa Bay and Carolina. They have to do something. I think they're 4th overall in the league. They've been probably the biggest surprise of the year. Like, don't you have to do something? Like you want to go on a long playoff run, and like you talked about with Toronto, like, why isn't this year the year that you could go on a long playoff run? So do you see them going after an Ekholm or Savard if Ekholm's available? But like, what can you do there? They're kind of in a tough spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought them up, Ezra, because they're really intriguing. Where this is a franchise that's been, I don't know if a laughing stock is the right way to put it, but close to it in terms of making the playoffs and being a team that has any sort of mojo or swagger, right? Like Barkov and Huberdeau having great seasons, you know, all the power to them. But including Ekblad, like if you go back over that core's tenure in Florida, it's been nothing. It's been, you know, just goose eggs for them. So I think, you know, with a new GM and Bill Zito, you assume that there's players on his roster that he isn't married to. That was part of the old regime, that he's willing to move out. To maybe acquire someone who is more up his alley and may push them a little closer to being, you know, solidified heading into the playoffs. So there's that. I think, as I mentioned, the lack of success in that market, you have to capitalize on what they've done this season. I don't care if it's this weird setup and it's, you know, who knows what's going to happen in the playoffs. Like, and I realize there's not a ton of Florida Panther fans out there compared to other markets, but ones that are, like, reward these people. Like it's insane, right? It's kind of like with Arizona, whenever they get close, it's like push, you know, get there. Buffalo Sabres, if we're talking next year around this time about how they've rebounded and they're close to the playoffs, it's like get there. You know, you don't have to hemorrhage your whole future. You know, maybe safeguard things like first round picks. But if you have to package, you know, a second and a third to acquire a guy, do it. Because you need to really keep people happy in your market. Otherwise, what's the point, right? So I think Florida's super interesting. It's really unfortunate with Ekblad. He was having a phenomenal season. Really, if you go back to last year, he had a really strong season as well. And, you know, they struck gold with Carter Verhaeghe. You got to give them props. Whatever it was, Zito, who thought that was a good idea to sign him to a 2-year deal there for, I think, $1 million a year, or if it was the analytics team or a pro scout, whoever it was, they deserve a raise because he's worked out fabulously. And then you go up and down their lineup and they're looking a hell of a lot better than they have in the previous 5 years or so. So I think they have to do something. Again, this all sort of relates back to, you know, it's easy for us to say from the outside, go all in. It's easy for us to say, you know, trade that first round pick. But like, what's the timeline for Bill Zito? He came in here, he's new. He could be, you know, raring to go and saying, yeah, let's do this. Like we're talking about the Panthers. But maybe his original plan was, hey, let's peak in, I don't know, 2023. Oh, okay. Well, this is throwing a wrench into things. Maybe I'll ease into the pool a little bit here at the trade deadline and go from there. So we'll see what happens, but really, you know, they're a team to keep an eye on. Like I mentioned before, Colorado, just based on really, I think they're very, very dangerous, and then the cup window is a real thing. You want to be very cognizant of that. I think Vegas is very good. The New York Islanders, I mean, watch out for them. lurking with Anders Lee on LTIR and having some space there. So there's certainly some teams, like even though it's a weird year and it's a little mushy in terms of identifying these teams that are elite because everyone's playing only a select amount of teams. But there are some where you're going like, come on, let's go. Let's get into the mix here.
John Mattis is the senior hockey writer for The Score. He's a good friend of this program. John, appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for joining this morning. Good to see you on the screen as opposed to hearing your voice only, and we'll do it again real soon.
Yeah, awesome, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, John. All the best. There he goes, John Mattis here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, joined by Ezra Ginsburg and Dave Minuk. John's appearance was brought to you by Boston Pizza. Boston Pizza has the perfect starting lineup tonight with the BP Game Day Meal Deal. Choose 2 of your favorite medium gourmet pizzas, along with a triple order of Boston's famous wings, plus 2 dipping sauces, all for $54.99. It serves 5 to 6 people. Available for takeout and delivery only at bostonpizza.com or download the MyBP app.
What are your favorite dipping sauces, Drew?
Well, I'm not a big wing guy first and foremost, so I would really rarely order wings. But generally speaking, if I'm ordering a dipping sauce, I'm a honey dill guy. Yep. I enjoy sort of a good garlicky dipping sauce of some sort.
What about ranch? Do you like ranch?
Well, I know that you bathe in ranch, so I don't want to insult you by not paying props to your bathing technique. But generally speaking, ranch is. I'm a ranch guy when it comes to carrots or celery, something like that.
Yeah, give me that ranch. Like I will bathe in that ranch dip that comes in the veggie tray. But I'm on team honey dill. Like I love honey dill with my fries. Sometimes I just like to take spoonfuls of it. I love it. So
the spoonfuls thing is something you probably want to consult a doctor about before going ahead and doing that,
or a nutritionist.
Yeah, a nutritionist. Really anybody that I would really talk to about that. The Jets, we know, we're supposed to play Sunday and Tuesday against the Vancouver Canucks. Those games postponed. The Vancouver going through a serious COVID situation that sounds like it's still going to continue to get worse before it gets better. We send our best to everybody in Vancouver dealing with that, of course. Ottawa here on Monday, the only Jets game between last night's shootout loss to Toronto, and Thursday night in Montreal. Is it Laurent Brossoit on Monday for you guys? Really give Connor Hellebuyck that really big chunk of time off? Maybe Brossoit bounces back from the poor performance last Saturday? Or do you think that it's Hellebuyck because there's really no reason not to play him Monday against the Senators?
Go ahead, Dave. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to me, I think Paul Maurice isn't worried about Laurent Brossoit. He was asked about that. He was asked about whether he was considering going after that game, his last game, whether he would go back to Laurent Brossoit. And he said no. He said, he's not worried about him. With the performances that he's put in for this team this season, he's entitled to have one bad game. And the goaltenders have been good, and the goaltenders have, are largely the reason why the Jets have been able to achieve what they've been able to achieve this season. So, but we know Connor Hellebuyck wants to play. We know Connor Hellebuyck doesn't like big breaks between games. And does he really need the rest right now? Is he overtaxed? I don't think so. I think that if you're Connor Hellebuyck, especially knowing you're going to have some time off in between those games, I could see them going back with Connor Hellebuyck on Monday. And then again, you'll see they have I think one of the games on the road trip is a back-to-back, correct?
Not on this road trip, no.
No, but it doesn't matter. They'll get Laurent Brossoit in probably one of those Montreal games. My guess would be they go Hellebuyck.
Pardon me, I'm wrong. The Wednesday, April 14th and 15th is a back-to-back.
Okay,
I apologize for that.
Okay, anyways, but so Laurent Brossoit is going to get one of those games. And again, he may get one of the Montreal games. But to your point, Drew, I could see them going in, give Hellebuyck that time to rest, and then, but then again, if you think about it, then you're probably going to play Hellebuyck, you play him 4 or 5 out of those games on the road. So, again, you can't really go wrong this season with either of the goaltenders. I think both have shown, Ezzy, that they've been able to step up when needed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question that Drew brings up because, we've been seeing so much Hellebuyck, right? That you kind of forget that, Brossoit would like to get in for a game. So yeah, I do think there's a chance that Brossoit plays that game on Monday against Ottawa, which obviously, we didn't know about until a day ago that there was going to be a game on Monday. And Dave's right. Yeah, you're going to see Brossoit in one of those games against either Ottawa or Toronto. I would probably lean towards, Ottawa for obvious reasons in that back-to-back. But yeah, I think if Brossoit doesn't play Monday, Drew, put it this way, I think there's a good chance he gets one of those games on the road against Montreal.
The reason why I think it's possible that we see Brossoit on Monday, even though it's not a game that you would quote unquote typically expect to see him, is that had Vancouver been here Sunday, Tuesday, I think that you likely would have seen Brossoit in one of those two games, even though it's not a back-to-back scenario, just because you get him back into the swing of things. You don't necessarily want him sitting for 3 weeks at a time, between games, because it would be pretty close to that. He played last Saturday against the Flames, and we know that third period went quite poorly for him. And then he wouldn't play again until that back-to-back in the middle of April. So I don't know if you necessarily want your goalie being out of the lineup for just under 3 weeks without playing a game. So Monday he gets that opportunity when he was likely to get an opportunity either Sunday or Tuesday against the Canucks. So, I mean, I think it sort of makes sense. But, again, to your point, Dave, Connor Hellebuyck wants to play. And are you hindering your team? I mean, not, no disrespect to Laurent Brossoit, but are you hindering your team by not playing your best goaltender against an opponent just for the sake of it? I mean, there's no real reason not to play Hellebuyck aside from, wanting to just maybe give Brossoit, throw him a bone, let him bounce back after the poor performance against Calgary. But that's been so long ago now that he's probably put it aside. I don't think he's sitting there necessarily stewing about it or anything.
No, absolutely not. And, again, I don't think you're putting Laurent Brossoit in if that's, where you kind of penciled him in to go, right? Like, we know that, this is a fluid situation here, but we know that, Paul Maurice has a schedule that he's sticking to, even though that might change. So if we don't see Laurent Brossoit on Monday, we might see him in that first game against the Canadiens on the road. But we've got Marty on now, so I'm going to stop talking.
There you go. We have a different goaltender joining us on the program now. Our good friend Marty Biron is joining us from Buffalo. He covers the Sabres for MSG. You also know him from his coverage on both TSN and RDS. Marty, good to see you on this Saturday morning. A happy Easter to you and yours. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. You're catching me in my office. I know everybody likes to be in their offices when they do these Zoom type, meetings. This is my office. My car is my office. So you're catching me in my office.
Are you driving the kids from practice here, there, and everywhere, or is it just you're running your Saturday morning errands?
I'm doing delivery. So I had like about 17 big boxes in the trunk just a minute ago to bring to a store, and my son was helping me with that. So that's what we're doing.
Well, that's good. We appreciate you making some time for us in between your deliveries as an Uber driver or whatever it is that's going on with those deliveries there, Marty. Obviously brought you on, talk a little bit about goaltending, look around the NHL. We have to start with what happened in Buffalo. They won a game. And, I mean, without sort of delving too deep into what has obviously been a tough year with the Sabres, between COVID, between the coaching change, between the struggles on ice, what's it like for a player to just be mired in a slump, the likes of which that Buffalo was mired in? Is it just that you're dreading going to the rink on a daily basis when things like that happen?
I think Marty was frozen.
I'll tell you this. I was on a 10-game winless streak one year, and that was about as long as you could ever imagine. It felt like it was the whole season. So I just moved because I think I was in a bad spot. So anyway, so I was in a 10-game winless streak with the Flyers. We were first in our division when we started. We ended up last when it ended. So awful. That was awful. It was the longest time ever. Hated it. But, we got through it. So I can't imagine what it's like for the Sabres to be on an 18-game winless streak and finally that win. And that's feel like you're making the playoffs. And especially in COVID bubble and the protocol this year where you can't go to restaurants, you can't go to movie theaters, you can't go visit your friends. It had to be the best time ever to be able to go through it.
And Marty, just, sticking with the Sabres, because obviously you're very familiar with the organization and you played for the organization. And, as you mentioned, nobody, I think we might have lost Marty there. So hopefully we'll get him back on. He's doing his deliveries with his son. So, it's
You got to wait. You got to
right now.
I was like, whoa, Marty is driving and doing this interview. That is multi-talented.
I think Marty just got sick of us.
Yeah.
That sounds about right, though. I mean, usually one question, and most of our guests are sick of us. So hopefully, Marty will be able to reconnect, and we can get him back here on the show. I mean, it was actually getting to the point.
Can't even imagine what it's like to be in Buffalo.
It was getting to the point where it was almost cringeworthy, especially that the game before the last loss in the losing streak, where they had the lead against the Flyers, and and looked like it was going to end, and then they blow it late in that third period. That was getting to be really painful to watch from the Buffalo Sabres. I think Marty's trying to reconnect, so hopefully we'll be able to get him back in. If we can't, then
there we go.
There you go, Marty. I think we got you back on the screen now, and if it's not going to work, then so be it. But are you there, Marty? No, looks like Marty might be frozen again. So we'll try and work through these technical difficulties. You know what it's like sometimes when things like this happen. These new technologies and driving around are maybe not conducive.
Oh, there we go. Oh, we lost him again.
Looks like we lost him again. Hang on.
Oh, he's back.
Yes? No? Maybe?
We're working hard to get that Wi-Fi going.
Yeah.
Need to send the Canadian Wi-Fi over to Buffalo.
That's right. The Wi-Fi is in COVID protocol, unfortunately, right now. So, Marty, I think you're still frozen. So we'll try again in a little bit. Marty Biron, obviously, we appreciate his efforts trying to join us in and around a busy day for him, undoubtedly, here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Gentlemen, we talked about Laurent Brossoit. We talked about the Jets there. With this upcoming game against the Ottawa Senators. You look at the month ahead for the Jets, and we've talked about it sort of throughout the course of the show. The back-to-backs, the 3-day break, the 2-day break. Not a time. There's some time off, probably more than the Jets were necessarily expecting. But it's going to be a very interesting month for this team. I think that the next 2 weeks for me, if the Jets can continue to play at the level that we're expected seeing from them for the next couple of weeks, then they're going to be in an even better position, and that you can almost, I'm going to say, recalibrate what you need to do over the last couple of weeks of the regular season and going into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you don't want to look past, this upcoming road trip and to those games against the Leafs. But we know, guys, that those games are going to be absolutely crucial, especially, considering the Jets lost these last 2 games to the Leafs. Those are going to have big time implications in terms of, whether the Jets are able to catch the Leafs. But yeah, you're right, Drew. I mean, this is a playoff team. I think Marty's popping on. See, Marty wants back. See, here we go. I think we got Marty now.
Can you hear us now, Marty? He seems to be in the woods, so he's moved from the car.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Alone. I don't want to leave you guys on. I moved.
We appreciate the effort.
I'm literally stealing the Wi-Fi signal from the business I'm at right now. I'm stealing the Wi-Fi.
We appreciate it, Marty.
That's dedication.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? We all have to share, right? So if they want to share their Wi-Fi with me, I'm all good with that.
That's beautiful, Marty. We were obviously talking about the Sabres and the losing streak and how difficult that was. And you mentioned that you were going through, when you were a player, you went through a losing streak where it just felt like misery sort of day after day. And so it must have been such a relief for the Sabres to just get that win, no matter what happens the rest of the year, just sort of almost to be able to breathe again and not have that the crushing weight sitting on their chest.
It had to feel so good. And I'll tell you this, this was an NBCSN game in the U.S., so we did not cover it. So we have now a 19-game winless streak with our MSG broadcast, and I'm feeling it. And the Sabres got to win one game, so they put that in the past. So me and Brian Duff are feeling it right now. Tonight, they played the New York Rangers again. I'm like, okay, that's got to be our Saturday night. We want that win. Not for the players, we want it for us and our fans that are watching us on MSG in Buffalo. So, the players had to be feeling it. I'm feeling it, so I want more wins.
Yeah, Marty, and I have to take credit, right? The Sabres won right after I texted you to come on Illegal Curve, so I think we should get a little credit for that as well. No, I'm just obviously joking, but just one more question about the Sabres, and then
I'm giving you the credit. You are the reason. I am giving you credit for that one for sure.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And just one more on the Sabres, and then we want to ask you, some other questions. But 9 days away from the trade deadline, I believe that you're going to be, covering it for TSN. Hopefully, James Duthie doesn't get too bored there in Toronto. But if you're Kevin Adams, like, what do you do? Because obviously Taylor Hall's name is out there; he might be moved. But you also hear, Jack Eichel's name might be out there. Like, are you just making one or two moves, or what do you do here? Because obviously the Sabres aren't making the playoffs, but there's a that word rebuild. Even though the Sabres have been rebuilding for quite some time now, it just keeps popping up.
What I would do if I was me, I would look at all my unrestricted free agents and I would look to trade them. And that means you're talking about Taylor Hall, you're talking about Brendan Montour, Tobias Reeder, Riley Sheehan. I like Montour. I think he could be a guy on the blue line here for quite a few years with Buffalo. But if you can't come to an agreement, then you got to get something in return, right? So I would do that. Second, you may look at Sam Reinhart and Rasmus Ristolainen, although the insiders are all saying that the Sabres are not entertaining those two being moved. But if the right package comes, I mean, the Florida Panthers lost Aaron Ekblad. They're looking for a right D. If they want to put a right package together and go and get Ristolainen, then you have to do it, right? Or Sam Reinhart now is playing center because Dylan Cousins is out, because Jack Eichel is out, because Eric Stahl got traded. Well, maybe a few games at center, and then there's more value in Sam Reinhart than just being a right wing. So I don't know. I would look into it. I don't know that I would do it if the price is not right. Maybe that's more of a summertime thing. But anybody that has an expiring contract in Buffalo, I think, is on the table right now to get whatever you can get for.
Marty, Jack Campbell is having an unbelievable season right now in Toronto. He's taken over. He's 8-0 as a starter for the Leafs. If you're Kyle Dubas, do you have confidence in Jack Campbell because there's still talk about the Leafs needing to acquire a goaltender? Do you think that he would have sufficient experience to be your guy to go in, especially knowing that the North is very winnable this season for the Leafs?
Well, if I'm the Leafs, I feel comfortable with Jack Campbell as a goaltender. I just don't know that I feel comfortable with Jack Campbell when it comes to injuries and all that he had to deal with in the past. So if he's 100% healthy, yes, absolutely. But you saw the game last night. He played really well against the Jets. But he looked banged up again. He looked like he didn't even celebrate after the game. He was like, his body looked like it was sore. So can you play 7-game series and 4 of them when your body's not recovering and is not 100% healthy? So that's a concern. I think he's a really good goalie, and I think he would be fighting Freddie Anderson for the number 1 spot in net starting when the playoffs start. So, but the health of Jack Campbell, the health of Freddie Anderson is a question mark. So do you rely on Michael Hutchinson then? I think you may have to look for somebody maybe more established to be able to help if you have some answers on Freddie Anderson and if they're not good.
Marty B. Ron is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Marty, here in Winnipeg, everybody's, hot and bothered waiting for the Jets to try and acquire a defenseman to shore up the back end. You mentioned Brandon Montour, and this is a guy that the Sabres had high hopes for, bringing him over from Anaheim in a deal a couple of years back, pending unrestricted free agent. What's the best aspect of his game? And is this a guy who maybe can continue to elevate his play if he gets to a new situation, if he gets to a new market in a place like Winnipeg in the heart of a playoff battle?
Well, like I said, I wouldn't trade Brendan Montour. I would try to sign him again here in Buffalo if I could, because I really like him. Here's the thing. He can play both the right side D, he can play the left side D. He's a very good puck-moving defenseman. He skates extremely well, provides offense. He's not the best defensively, but he can skate, so he can defend quite successfully as well. So I would definitely look, if I was a team that needed reinforcement, I'm not looking as a 1-2 defense, more of a 4-5-6. Brendan Montour could fit in perfectly, and that could help on the power play, could play 18, 19 minutes if you need him to. So that's what he can do. He can play both right, left D's, or right shot defense, and he skates really well. So I think teams would love that.
Marty, just a few more questions. I wanted to ask you about Carter Hart because Alain Vigneault, gave him the 2-day break. He's going to start tonight versus the New York Islanders. Obviously the season hasn't, I think you'd agree, it hasn't gone, the way he'd like. And he's obviously still a young goaltender, but what have you seen from Carter Hart? There were some that were picking him to possibly be a dark horse for the Vezina Trophy. Like, in your opinion, kind of what's gone wrong with him? And do you think this 2-game break is going to benefit him and he's going to come out with a really good performance against the Islanders?
I would have given him a longer break. Personally, I think he needs to get himself moving again. He's really good technically. He knows how to play the position, but the best goaltenders in the league right now, they battle. They have that sense of urgency. They battle. Carter Hart doesn't. Carter Hart is slow in that right now. He needs to find that gear in practice. You don't find that gear in games. You find that gear in practice. And that's what Alain Vigneault said. He needs to practice harder. He needs to practice better. Well, 1 week may not be enough. Now, he may go in and play really well, or he may go in and play really poorly. I think he needs to continue to work on his practice habits, because this year it's kind of a written off year right now for Carter Hart, but he needs to get back to the level that he can play, and the Flyers need him to play for next season. Listen, I had him on my list for Team Canada, so now you end up with, Mackenzie Blackwood maybe as a third goalie for Team Canada instead of Carter Hart. That nobody was thinking that before the season started.
Marty, the big trade of the season obviously was the Line 8 trade from Winnipeg to Columbus, but there hasn't been a tremendous amount of activity, and we were thinking that because of the quarantine here in Canada, that maybe the trade deadline wouldn't be, the trades would happen before the trade deadline. Are you anticipating that it's going to heat up a little bit, because it has been rather quiet so far?
I think it's going to heat up a little bit, but the market is very, very weird this year. The prices are not where teams want them. So are you going to settle for a third or fourth round pick when you were expecting a second rounder? So I think that's the problem. The other thing too is people were saying, well, with the 14-day quarantine in Canada, maybe teams should make deals 14 days up to the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. But now with the 7-day, and in the US, it's very different. Even if a Canadian teams make a trade, they're still going to get that player for 7 or 8 games to finish the season and then the playoffs. So I don't think teams are worried about the quarantine rules. I don't think teams are worried about, having to charter players in and then go through the COVID protocol. I think teams are going to go all the way to the last minute of the trade deadline. Why? Because the prices are not right. So they're going to wait to see if they can get the price that they would want, and they'll wait until Monday, 2:00 in the afternoon to get that done.
Marty, we'll let you go on this final question. Here in the North Division, it really seems pretty clear who the 4 playoff teams are going to be. Toronto and Winnipeg, Edmonton and Montreal. The Jets really, the Jets have Connor Hellebuyck as their clear-cut number 1 goaltender. The other 3 teams, have some question marks. Carey Price, still obviously ahead of Jake Allen, but Price has had his ups and downs this year. Come playoff time, do you think the Jets maybe have an advantage over the other teams, knowing that they have that no doubt in goal with Connor Hellebuyck, or do the other teams, Montreal maybe with Carey Price, finding his game again? Can they, are they maybe a bit of a dark horse right now, having just sort of come out of their COVID situation?
I'll tell you this. I think the team that's really at a disadvantage is Toronto, because we talked about the Jack Campbell, Freddie Anderson situation. I think the Edmonton Oilers know it's Mike Smith. And Mike Smith, he may steal your game, but he won't win you a series. But he's their best option right now. So Mike Smith in Edmonton, Carey Price in Montreal, Connor Hellebuyck in Winnipeg, question mark in Toronto. That's really where the Canadian division is at right now with their goaltending. So it could be advantage Winnipeg, because they are, for me, the better of the last 3 teams. Like Toronto, I think, is ahead of everybody else. But with that question mark in net, I think now you got to give the edge to Winnipeg. And if they make a move or 2, then I think Winnipeg will be very, very tough in the playoffs. They play a heavy style game. Last night's game was good. They had a bad second period, but I think they played really well. Their penalty kill was good. Hellebuyck was awesome on that overtime penalty kill. So I think they put the doubt into Toronto with that game last night.
Marty B. Ron is a MSG, TSN, and RDS analyst. He's joining us from the woods, so we'll let him get back to getting on.
Yeah, get back in that car, Marty.
Yeah, Marty, we appreciate
I
it.
got my axe and my chainsaw. I'm ready to go.
Thanks so much, Marty.
Thanks for
Marty.
stealing some Wi-Fi for us, Marty. There he goes. Marty B. Ron. We'll do it again soon. Take care, Marty. Marty B. Ron joining us.
He's the best. Like, he's been on the show so many times, and the fact he's obviously a busy guy, and it's just awesome that he would do that. He has an axe with him. That was amazing.
And the fact that he went to a business and stole their Wi-Fi, brilliant.
Yeah. I appreciate that level of dedication. I'm not sure I would have done that for you guys. If I wasn't hardwired into my Wi-Fi right now, I'm not sure I would be bothering to really seek out to spend more time with you guys.
As he's hardwired into my Wi-Fi, which is why he's a lot more clear than when he does his post-game shows, which is usually a little more grainy.
Yeah, well, we'll work on the. There's only so much you can do with Ezzy there, Dave. We got to throw him a bone every now and then.
He's usually in that high-quality Central Heights Wi-Fi as opposed to that poor Southern River Heights Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you both are living the hard life, undoubtedly. Let's take our final commercial break. We'll come back. We'll do a wrap. We'll talk about the week that's ahead for the Winnipeg Jets. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. One final segment on this Saturday morning. It's brought to you by our good friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, officially declared the funniest place in Winnipeg by Illegal Curve Hockey. For over 30 years, Rumors has been bringing Winnipeg the best in stand-up comedy. To purchase tickets or for a list of performers and showtimes, visit rumorscomedyclub.com. As we announced last week on the show, Rumors is reopening on May the 11th. That's just a little bit more than a month from now. It's going to be their annual roast battle. 16 of Winnipeg's best comics will be roasting each other in a bracket championship format. Tickets available right now at rumorscomedyclub.com. Rumors, of course, taking all of the necessary COVID protocols, COVID precautions into place. They're so excited to be reopening. We encourage you, get out, laugh, do it in a safe manner. That's going to be at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Coming up May 11th is when they're going to reopen.
And boys, all of my money, which is $11.36, is going on Benji Rothman in that roast battle. It's all on you, Benji.
Who gave you $11.36? That's what I want to know.
That was $11.35 more than I thought he had.
Yeah, it's my leftover allowance from Naomi.
If you want to laugh about something, Cap Friendly just depth charts just tweeted out a random stat of the day. Tristan Jarry, Penguins goaltender, has more assists this season than Taylor Hall has goals. 3-2. Talk about random.
That is random. I got to tell you, it's random that a goalie really has that many assists. That's a lot of assists in the season.
It is a lot of assists. It is. I think Connor Hellebuyck has 7 total in his career. So three in the season is pretty good.
Tristan Jarry has 3 and Taylor Hall has 2 goals. That is a very random. That is a very random stat, Dave. You are correct about that.
And hold on, who has the record for all-time assists amongst goalies?
Marty Brodeur.
Why don't you tell us?
No.
Eric Zajac?
Ronnie Hextall.
No.
Ken Dryden.
No.
Who is it?
Think Pittsburgh. Think Pittsburgh. Yeah. Tom Barrasso.
Tom Barrasso.
Oh. I was going to guess, what's his name in Dallas?
Marty Turco?
Yeah, Marty Turco, because he was really good with the puck.
No, Tommy Barrasso.
Talking about goaltenders playing the puck, Connor Hellebuyck is playing the puck more often this year with more confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You see him being more aggressive with some of his puck handling and with some of his breakouts than you have in years past. I mean, I don't think that he's necessarily crisp. I wouldn't say that he's exquisite with his puck handling by any stretch of the imagination. But he's definitely working on it, and you can see that he's more confident in doing it in the way he handles it during the game.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and you're right, Drew. He's not he's not Mike Smith, right? Marty talked about Mike Smith. Mike Smith is one of the best goalies in playing the puck, so he's not one of those kind of natural puck handling goaltenders. And you got to think that he works on it with Wade Flaherty a little bit in practice and in the off season, right? So yeah, I have noticed that as well. And even if you're able to play the puck once or twice a game, that can be the difference, right? If it helps a breakout or something along those lines. So it's a good observation on your part, because that goaltenders work on that. It's something that goaltenders definitely work on.
Yeah, you can see that it's probably I think it's we know how hard Connor Hellebuyck works, and I have to assume that it was a point of pride for him to try and improve that. I see a lot of people in the chat still saying that he still scares me with his puck handling, and Matthew Thompson saying he still holds his breath. Matt Reimer, Hellebuyck still scares me when handling the puck. It's funny, and I sort of understand where they're coming from with that sentiment, because he doesn't, it's not necessarily pretty, but it's better. Because before, whenever he'd go back and play the puck, and you'd be like, "Get back in the net immediately, Connor. Don't even bother. Don't do it. Just stay in the net. That's where you're best." This year, the improvements, I think, are evident. At least they have been to some extent. I mean, it's still a high bar he's got to work towards being, towards the top in the league, but he's no longer, I think, a tire fire with the puck behind his net.
Think about it, guys. He's won a Vezina Trophy. He's been a finalist twice, right? And he obviously lost to Pecorine, speaking of, good puck handling goaltenders. So imagine if he's able to even be 20% or 30% better. Like, that's the scary part, right? Like, Marty Brodeur won the Vezina. I still think he is, top 3 goaltender of all time. He is the best puck handling goaltender of all time. But just think about that. Like, he is the best, and that's an element of his game that's a little bit weak. So he's always trying to get better. That's great.
Let me ask you guys this question before we wrap up for this Saturday morning. We remind you that on Monday, the post-game show will be on right after the Jets and the Senators. It's a 6 o'clock puck drop here in Winnipeg. Post-game show probably right around 8:30. But while you're here, just subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the reminder button.
No, don't hit it. Smash
Ring
it.
the bell. Ring the bell.
Ring the bell. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. You'll get alerted each and every time we go live here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show and the Illegal Curve post-game show come Monday night. So we'll see you about 8:30 on Monday night. Between now and next Saturday, when we're back on air with the flagship show, the flagship program of Illegal Curve Hockey, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, will the Jets have made a move? Will they have made a trade between now and next Saturday?
Is that a rhetorical question?
No. Why would it be rhetorical?
I was going to say, it'd be kind of the opposite of doing a show.
You're kind of a rhetorical guy.
Well, no, it was a legitimate question. Do you think that the trade for the Jets will happen between now and next Saturday?
Oh, I just wasn't sure if that was being asked to us or if it was just being asked to, as philosophically. I wasn't sure. But
I wasn't asking it to myself.
Yes, there will be a trade between now and April 12th. I do think Chevy is on the phones. I think he's talking. He's having those conversations. And I do think that there is going to be a defenseman acquired by the Jets.
Okay, so as he's saying that between now and next Saturday, there will
maybe
be
a forward.
As he actually said, between now, he didn't answer your question properly because you actually asked between now and next Saturday, and as he said, between now and April 12th. So he kind of punted on that one. And
Dave, I have low expectations for his listening comprehension.
Lowered expectations. I do think it's going to happen before next Saturday.
Yeah, I have a feeling as well. I think that you're probably going to see a depth addition. I don't think he's going big game hunting. I don't even know if there is big game hunting to be had this season, to be honest, based on how everything's going. And I think part of the reason we're not seeing it now, I think part of the reason why it's dragging is because teams like Nashville are rolling. And again, Columbus, a lot of people pointing this out. Jack Rosbeck, and we talked about it, was a healthy scratch, or is going to be a healthy scratch tonight. They're going with Del Zotto as a seventh defenseman.
Boy, is that an insult when if you're John Tortorella is electing to use Michael Del Zotto and go with 7 defensemen as opposed to playing you. That is
it's a statement.
That's a statement that first of all, John Tortorella is leaving with no bleeps given on his way out in Columbus, and it's also right? What's that?
You don't have to bleep yourself. I mean, we're a quasi-family show, but you don't really have to bleep yourself.
I just didn't want to use that word right now. It's you never know who's listening. I want if there's younger kids listening. My friend texted me the other day saying he walked into his son's room.
Actually, we do have young fans. I know a friend of mine's kid also.
Watch your language, Drew.
So. Yeah, my friend texted me. He walked into his son's room yesterday or earlier this week, and his son was sitting in front of his Chromebook, and he was watching the Illegal Curve postgame show. So I want to make sure that he can continue to keep doing that. I don't want to use any curse words in front of impressionable.
Anyways,
how old is he? 10 years
Jerry
old.
Jerry Seinfeld doesn't curse in his routine. You know that, Drew. Like, we don't need to curse. That's not part of the show. So I've never cursed. I've been doing the show for 12 years. Not one swear word.
Not the least bit true. When we were on Kick FM,
I never swore.
You did. I'll tell you exactly when it happened. We were live on air,
Shocking.
And your good buddy and a friend of the show, Dave Shore, walked in behind you, and you didn't know he was there, and he scared you by grabbing your chair while you were in the middle of a sentence, and you said, "Oh, bleep." And that was the one and only time I believe that you've sworn on air.
Well, I've never, since we were on Sports Radio 1290, TSN 1290, I never swore. So
that's
maybe back on the Kick FM days, I apologize to the CRTC.
Anyways, look, I actually think the Jets will make a depth move. I do think that they're going to probably try and go out there and make a signing. So I would be surprised if they don't. But again, like I said, I think part of the problem is that teams are still in it, right? Like you've got a lot of hard charge towards the deadline. So we'll see what happens in that regard, because if the prices are ridiculous, then like we talked about with Lee Hextall, do you just allow your internal options, your Ville Heinolas, your Sammy Nikus, your Dylan Sandbergs, if you need to, I guess Nelson Noje, who's on the taxi squad, do you let those guys just come in and not necessarily, if you need them, be the depth, and you just trust what you have? Again,
I just wanted to say, Dave, there's a few people in the chat that are talking about Dmitry Kulikov. Like, I actually wouldn't have an issue if he's brought in as like an 8th or 9th defenseman. Like, he's not going to cost you anything. Like, what are you going to have to give up to acquire Kulikov, a 6th rounder?
Yeah, I can't imagine it would cost you very much.
I can't see it coming. I can't see it happening. But stranger things have happened. Certainly, the Jets
actually been pretty good in New Jersey.
With the loss of Nathan Beaulieu, the Jets probably, as we talked about back in hour number 1, in the market for a depth defenseman. Before we leave today, I want to give a shout out to St. Adolphe, Manitoba. They're one of the 4 cities vying for Kraft Hockeyville. Want to encourage everybody to go vote for St. Adolphe. Voting doesn't open until April 9th, which is, if my math tells me, 6 days from now, next Friday at 8 a.m. Central. CraftHockeyville.ca. Make sure you vote for our friends in St. Adolphe, Manitoba. Make sure that they are awarded the title of Kraft Hockeyville 2021. Big thank you to everybody who joined us today on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. The chat was active. So great to see so many of you that join us each and every time we go live here on our YouTube channel. Want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, and Boston Pizza. Support these fine local businesses because they support Illegal Curve Hockey. Whatever you're celebrating this week, the end of Passover, Easter weekend. We hope that it's an important one to you. We hope it goes the best it can. Try and stay safe, everybody. We know that the time is, everybody wants to get back together. We need to stay apart for just a little while longer. For Ezra Ginsburg, for Dave Minuk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Thanks for listening. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.